Hello, hello, hello. If you are out there and can see and hopefully hear us, please do let us know. I'm just double checking to make sure everything is running. And before you all say anything, I'm aware that I'm slightly tinged green. I don't know why.
Yeah, we started approximately, I don't know, about a minute, maybe too late this week because we were trying to resolve the green sheen that has descended upon Sotek. I quite like it. It gives him I don't know, a kind of orky appearance, perhaps, or maybe more of a lizard man one.
Either that or when I came out of Nurgle's Realm from last week, I brought some of it with me. One of the two. I'm not, I have no idea what's causing this, but it is what it is. But hopefully you're all having a lovely week. It looks like everyone can see and hear us. That is fantastic. Yeah, it's very strange. Like, I have a new camera, which is fine. Like, I'd be like, oh, that's it. But what's on my other recording software, I'm not green. So I don't know. It's computers. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what you're gonna do, it just is what it is. I'm kind of looking forward to this week because we've done quite a lot of Khorne lately, but this one has got, I think, some hidden depths, which is going to be quite fun for us to delve into during the course of our discussion about Skulltaker, the champion of Khorne. It's going to be a fun one, I think.
Oh yeah, very much agree, especially because for once, I actually sat down and read through a full book in a day because I went and read through the Blood for the Blood God book yesterday. It was a much better experience than I was anticipating, which was very nice.
I was just going to say, I found it interesting too, because I thought I hadn't read it. I thought it was one of those ones that were sitting on the edge of me not having read, but no, as it turns out, when I read it, because I also read it again, as I mentioned when I did the Q&A last week, I was like, oh shit, I read this when it was released. I completely forgot. But yeah, I'm going to mention that in the intro, I think.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk quite a bit about that. And one of the things that's funny about it is I think this episode is going to be a very, very perfect encapsulation, talking about that book especially, about why there is often a conflict between what someone will read and like throw up on the wiki because they take things at a very face value approach versus when you have a deeper understanding of the setting, you'll read something and go, oh, okay, I understand why someone thought that, but that's not what happened here.
Yeah, totally.
Which is very, very interesting. But this is going to be a really, really good one. I'm excited for this. Also, yes, because a lot of people are asking, I assume at some point in the near future, maybe at the end of this stream or maybe right at the beginning if he's already seen them or whatever, Andy at some point will talk about the new Cathay goodies and his thoughts on them. Because, oh boy, it is a spicy time to be an Old World fan. Finally.
Oh yeah, I do have thoughts. I was half considering doing a stream about it, but I didn't know if I would. I didn't know if I wouldn't. But I will just sum it up with a very simple little. Oh, yeah, I'm a happy man, and holy shit, look at Meow Ying. Oh yeah.
Oh dude. Yeah. It's like, oh, so this is what they've been building up to, and I like, would I say the wait's been worth it? I think so. Like, as much as I personally am not a big fan of all the re-releases. I understand a lot of people are very happy to get their hands on minis that they've always wanted. But man, I really hope that this is kind of a taste for what the future holds for us. Because like, oh my good lord, that Cathay range.
Yeah, there is a slight downside though, and I always like to bring a little bit of a yeah, but, and the yeah, but is it makes the rest of the old world look like shit because it is so much better. It's not miniatures that were released 20, 30, or maybe 40 years ago. These are new minis at the correct scale for the bases that they're on, looking absolutely freaking gorgeous. If you want to have an army that makes everyone else's army look shit, go get the Cathay army, because holy crap, does it look good. Oh, yeah, love it.
It's like, is that what I'm going to be picking up? Yes, if you were asking. That is an army I will be picking up.
Let me just quick up one there and say, happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mr. Santos.
Indeed. So, as always, we have a big stream of lore drops to come. But as also is always the case, we're going to have a bunch of super chats. We're going to be taking those in batches. So if you're dropping super chats right now, don't worry, we will be getting to them. So if you've not seen Lorebeards before, we take our super chats in batches. So if you drop a post in super chat, we will be reading it out and we will be discussing it. Indeed, before we dive into our intro, we'll be taking our super chats at the beginning. Also, if you haven't bought it yet, Dark Deeds is freaking amazing and you should do so right now. I don't know if I have the box here. I don't think I do. I feel naked without it. But as a small aside, if you've already bought the game, please bop over to Board Game Geek and do a quick review of it. We currently have 21 reviews and we need 100, as it turns out, for us to hit various charty things or whatever they do. So we need
25 though, at least.
Yeah, we've
okay,
started.
Good. Well, that's good. Hey, quarter of the way there. That's good.
We're 20. We're 21, so we're a fifth of the way there, not quite a quarter. Okay, so if you could go over to Board Game Geek as you're listening right now and give us a quick review for Dark Deeds, that'd be amazing. It's Dark Deeds 2nd edition, so make sure you get the 2nd edition one. I'm sure there is a link somewhere. I'll see if I can post it after I've done the intro. But other than that, will we dive into our super chats, or do you have anything you'd like to say before we begin, Mr. Sotek?
The only thing I will say, today is Sunday. Just a quick thing, and I'll repeat this at the end just for anybody that joins us late, but this Wednesday is going to be a very special, incredibly stupid episode of Lorebeards that I'm super excited for. This year we are coming out of left field to really talk about dumb stuff for April Fools and truly celebrating the holiday. We're going to be doing 40K versus fantasy and why 40K will lose. And it's not just us. Good old Pancreas Don't Work is also going to be joining us again, which is going to make it extra fun and dumb. So it's going to be a really good time. I heavily suspect that a lot of clips will be taken out of context and posted on all sorts of different websites, and we'll probably get death threats, and it'll be great. So
this is our Ronald's All Fools Day episode, and it is going to be awesome. 40K versus Warhammer, and why Warhammer is going to win.
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
Probably like many of our Wednesday streams, though, we'll be dropping votes up and giving you different choices because it's a very difficult subject to tackle as a whole, so we have to tackle bits of it. So we're doing lots of votes, so we can't be certain how it's going to turn out. I'm really looking forward to this. Yeah, totally. Let's spread the blame out a bit. Yeah.
All right. Other than that, on Friday this week, there'll of course be good old Lawhammer, which is progressing apace. I just watched not last week's episode, but the week before, which was okay. Things are happening.
Just wait until you watch the next one. It's the Cannons of Nuln, which is the episode that goes live on Monday. We'll be popping that one up. Was an episode that got so many comments because, as one person put it, well, this has turned the entire game round. Everything has changed. It's all gone upside down. I don't understand even what's happening. It's a proper brilliant episode. Really rather enjoyed where that one ended. And it ended on such a moment. It was great.
I can't wait. And then on Saturday, Rookery, I don't know if you know who you're doing this Saturday,
week. It's our mid-season break.
Okay.
But, so we have nothing to worry about there. But I do need to double check just while you're checking through the other things we're doing, because I do know that possibly I'm going to be hosting an award show. So I'll just double check that to make sure that's the case.
All right. This upcoming Sunday
Monday the 5th, it is. I'm going to be hosting the World Anvil Award Show with Janet and Dimmy. So that'll be on the Saturday. Lindsay and I are going to be hosting that along with Janet and Dimmy. So that'll all be the awards for what everyone's done over in World Anvil. So that'll be super fun.
Well, then we will be there to support Andy and Lindsay because that's what we do around here. And that'll be super fun. So cool. Andy's going to be doing an award show with his lovely wife. And
I'll have to ping them to make sure that we're still doing it. I'll do the message after the show.
And then on next Sunday, we'll be doing Help It. Finally.
Help It, finally.
Because it feels like every time we've tried to, something come up. It's finally coming. So anyway, without all the way, let's get into Super Chats.
Super Chats.
Skulltaker. Does that mean we're going to talk about the Tong? Yes. Yes, it does. There was a lot in this book that had me going, what? And yeah. This book was, like I said, for me, it was a very pleasant surprise because I made the mistake of people would come into like the chat or whatever and ask me a question about the book, and I'd be like, "Oh, well, that sounds ridiculous. So this book must be terrible." I thought it was
ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought it was like the Nagash book level of ridiculous. It wasn't. It was a delightful time. So I had a really good time with it. Cole Patterson, what does Andy think about the old world, Cathay, and Total War Slanesh? Oh, yeah, because Decala the Denied got announced.
I'll give a really brief answer to this one, Cole, because it's obviously not the topic of the day. But first, I absolutely adore the Cathayan troops. I just wish all old world armies had been given the same attention to detail. On the Total War Slanesh, really quite like it, but I did have, and I couldn't help but see a slight, not issue, just a more of a preference. They all kind of look Dark Elf coded.
You know, it's funny. So Andy said that when I sent it when it went live, I sent him the link. And it's like, you know, when you really look at how Slanesh was like, especially how Slanesh minis were like painted towards the end of Warhammer Fantasy, and to an extent today as well. It's like, I mean, to be fair, if you combine just a elf with Slanesh, it just kind of looks dark elf colors. You're like,
dark elf.
Yeah,
and I kind of wish that they'd spent a little bit more time making sure that they didn't look like a dark elf. But that said, great. It's great to see them finally. Really rather love them, but nevertheless, I can't help but go, it really feels like it could have done with just maybe an extra, I don't know, month or two in character development stage to ensure that they created something unique and distinctive.
Yeah, I'm just glad T'Challa looks like genuinely gorgeous while horrifying at the same time. They nailed it. Especially when her like mouth is open and the skin is stretching and everything. It's like,
that made me laugh.
Yeah, by the way, we're not going to do a stream on her because we already did. Go watch that.
Yeah, we did.
Done, man. Given the old world and Total War news, Merry Slanesh Smiths and Cathay New Year. Yep, just in time. just in time for winter. Cinchmeister, what if Uzul Slaneshi part head giver?
That means I can't make that joke. God damn it, I was going to make that joke.
Yeah. Hammond, beware of Carnosaurs. You'll get Jurassic. Jurassic.
You get your ass kicked.
Yeah. That works both ways. Yeah. So yeah, that's good. That's a nice Hannibal. Good afternoon, gents. Hope you're doing well. How do you guys feel about? Okay, does someone in the chat have an original joke? Anyone? Thank you, Hannibal. We appreciate it. Hammond. So we talked about Muad'Dib today. Muad'Dib.
Muad'Ib.
That's a Dune reference, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Skulltaker, Azul Muad'Dib. I'm not sure what the reference is. I feel like an idiot, Hammond.
I'm sure he'll tell us.
When you clarify it, I will feel like an idiot.
Omnicide, perfect timing. I'll be listening to this while doing some game development for my second job. Time to slaughter countless bugs for corn. Sadly, the bugs don't flow blood, but you know they do their best. You do your best. Darius Rose, Tong. Yeah, Tong are great. This book was super fun for Tong lore. This book I felt did such a good job of reinforcing my personal version of the Tong. With the way I like to use them as like what did in the Chaos Dwarfs when they weren't Chaos Dwarfs yet, and reinforcing like what we read about the Tong in the Tome of Corruption, which was really, really nice. Dino Man, on a random note, if you ever need some inspiration for what aspects of the Chaos Waste / Realm of Chaos look like, I highly recommend the art of Polish artist Betsinski. I'll go with that. I'm not going to be Polish. I'm not going to be so bold as to try the first name, but feel free to Bekinski. Yeah, that one I'll try.
Zidislav?
Something like that. Hammond, what did the tailor say? Wow, Hammond's just like, I'm coming in swinging at the start here. What did the tailor say to the customer who wanted to be left alone? Fine, suit yourself. Yeah, solid dad joke.
Usul, I should have got it. Yeah, Usul, base of a pillar.
Okay, credit there, Hammond. Good catch.
Thanks.
Darius, love the new Cathay reveals. Now I want my Warlord class Titan Kolek and Galrach. Yeah, dude. Man, if they would actually come out and release some fantasy minis of that size caliber, that would be Kolek Sun Eater should be Chungus. He should be big boy. Ryan Woodall, can't stay long, so I gotta ask now. What is a Skulltaker versus Scarbrand looking like? I feel like it would either be completely one-sided. I mean, so this when you take a character that's like the pinnacle of like duelists and champion of Khorne up against like the concept of rage embodied, that's this big, just big motherfucker. Like tabletop wise, Skulltaker's gonna get absolutely munched. He's just gonna get run over.
Yeah.
And when you read about Skulltaker, he's not invincible. There are limits to his abilities. And Scarbrand is pretty scary. I think there are circumstances Skulltaker would do okay, but I think the vast majority of the time he's going to get run over.
Yeah, I mean, this is a greater demon of Khorne, and one of the greater demons of Khorne, so to speak. Yeah, no, it's going to be Scarbrand mincing him under almost all circumstances, and that's both in terms of what the lore suggests, and if we go to the battle game. The battle game, Skulltaker is really, really good. He can take the vast majority of characters out there with a surprising amount of ease, but he's still not a greater demon of Khorne. Because greater demons of Khorne are one of the few things that are, truth be told, better than Skulltaker.
Man, prior to that 40K versus Fantasy stream, I'd like to propose something left field. The Tau, in my opinion, have the best chance because they won't try to conquer the planet. They'll just set up trade posts and end up with Warhammer humans as more Gavesa. Imagine Imperial engineer or gunners with rail guns. Only downside, what happens with the Skaven manage to get hold of Tau tech? See, that's kind of the interesting counter thing, though, is that for every approach that someone would take to the Warhammer world, there is a particular group that is going to be very problematic with that approach, which you pointed out a good thing of, like, if you don't try to conquer, if you try more to integrate with it, that might be fine, but there are factions like the Skaven that will brutally take advantage of that. The situation will be so much worse.
So, yeah, we're going to be looking forward to discussing that one at length.
David McHazard, longtime listener, first time listening live. Well, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to see you, McHazard.
I promise I'm normally not this green. Leador, to quote Sotek is happy, I want to be in that. Sotek Ying's Dragon when he was shown as a very fitting summary for the community feelings for the Cathay release. Listen, I just know how to play to y'all's sensibilities. It's part of my job. Anything you may or may not take seriously from what I say is it's a condemnation of you, not me, as far as I'm concerned. Super Harlock, thank you for the support. Plus, Andy has said some terrible shit on this show, so don't act like I'm suddenly so much worse. Cody Smith, can a Bloodletter and Marauder trade weapons? What happens when a Bloodletter is banished? Does the weapon remainers inherent to the Bloodletter? So demons, when you're dealing with a demon, all elements of the demon are part of the demon. They don't leave little bits behind. There's not like chunks of demonic armor or weapons left behind on battlefields. That being said,
except for when there is,
but there's usually some kind of narrative metaphysical bullshit going on in the background. It's not the standard affair. That being said, there are ways to get your hands on these kinds of things, and there are ways that demons can give pieces of themselves to people, either willingly or not.
Yeah. It's like Valentine's Day all over again.
Yeah,
so sword.
Could a Marauder receive the weapon of a Bloodletter? Probably. Would it be good for the Marauder? Probably not. That would come with a price. I would not recommend wielding the weapon of a Bloodletter to anyone because they are murderous rage and fury made manifest. And I think if you picked it up, unless you're like just the most willful motherfucker out there, you know, you're essentially like a hero or lord level character. Your mind is probably not going to survive the experience, or you're going to get possessed or some other nonsense, which is usually a pretty short track to your body's going to fall apart. David, how could a gnome illusionist defeat Skulltaker? Honestly, it could, because illusion magic works better against Skulltaker than trying to use magic like directly on him. And the best way to deal with Skulltaker is to make him bored. Is to not give him something to fight and make him bored until he just leaves. Because that's what he does. And that's something we'll talk about here today. There are tactics where you can avoid being killed by him if you're smart. A lot of people just aren't that smart. Which is fair, because he's very scary and he's good at what he does. But he can get bored. And a smart gnome would avoid him, not fight him. Which gnomes would be really fucking good at.
Yeah, I would also make one small addition, and that is that Khorne is, at least lore-wise, if not necessarily always in the rules, particularly antithetical to magic. So you might find that what is an effective illusion begins to crumble before the inherent rage that is represented by Skulltaker's bloody mindedness. So yeah, I think the best way to defeat Skulltaker is to not engage with Skulltaker.
Yeah, hide or run away.
Yeah,
would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Hammond, what is Slash's favorite pirate captain? Dick Halfmast. That is also the community's favorite zombie pirate. Who, man, he truly lives in a lot of people's hearts and minds, to say the least. 10,000 ants. Random question, but hypothetically, could dwarves collect bags of tiny pieces of troll and then drop them over enemies from gyrocopters? What, so they regenerate? It would be very dangerous because troll regeneration is fast. It's very fast. So if your goal was to try and chop a troll up into a small enough bit that you could time its regeneration back to put it in a bag, fly it over the enemy, and drop it on them, I mean,
no.
The answer would be no.
The answer would be no. Okay, so here, this is a common piece of silliness that often pops up in forums or in chat lines of Reddit or whatever, where someone will say, well, we'll just chop the troll and we'll get 50 trolls. No, that's not how trolls work. Trolls regenerate. A troll regenerates back, not a troll turns into 40 trolls.
Yeah, trolls are not the dragon teeth from Hercules or whatever that
they
myth is.
Absolutely are not. So one troll will regenerate back from however many bits you manage to cut out of that troll. And even then, if you cut up that much, it's really not that likely to come back because trolls regeneration is really not that good. It's okay, but it's not brilliant, not at least in the way that you're suggesting. And even if it was, it would probably take weeks, months for this to regenerate into anything even resembling a troll, because there's so much flesh that's required. And that takes something, which is not going to be just simply it regenerates into blop. If that happened, then, Grob would have a troll in him.
Yeah, trolls are much better about if they're split or there's a cut or something like that, all of that pulling itself back together very quickly. If you sever an arm, that arm's not coming back anytime super soon. And totally. the arm itself is totally dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it might have enough of a bone spear because it's slowly coming back. That's of course very dangerous.
Yeah, but, and I think the dead arm as well might have flesh which is festering away and sort of developing in a weird way, but it's not turning into a new living troll. It's just troll flesh naturally regenerates. It's a weird thing. I think that pretty much guarantees that we should do something like this.
Trolls would be a That's a great idea.
Good idea, Jeff. Like that one.
All right. Necromancer Kobold. Yes.
Covered it already. Go watch the beginning of the stream. It was amazing.
Except Donovan, except when there is me looking at Valkyria managed to keep hold of a demon prince's head somehow and it not vanish. I imagine it's probably core magic bullshit. Yeah, it's usually god bullshit.
And it's often Realm of Chaos bullshit as well, because in the Realm of Chaos, their bits do hang around. So if you happen to be up in a magically saturated place, their bits hang about all over the place. There's all manner of ways to get demon stuff. I mean, demon hearts and demon ichor and demon horns are core components of many a magic spell, for the colleges of magic even. But you need to have ways to keep those bits going, either by holding them in something that is magically saturated or something similar, holding, say, for example, a Bloodletter's horn inside a vat of blood. That will keep it going, because that's where it, in many respects, draws its power from. So there's ways to do it. And Valkyria, for example, killing a demon prince in a magically saturated area, that head's going to stay there for as long as needed.
Mm-hmm. Justin Mark, as a fan of both franchises, this is like watching my family fight. Will you two cover more Warhammer fan content like stories? I'd like to see you guys cover Runriki Strolar and its silly dwarfs.
I can't see I have any great desire to read all of the fan content out there, because I don't have that much time, man.
There might come a day, and likely will come a day, where we would be happy to maybe look over like members of the community stuff that
Yeah,
want to
maybe
have
if something's
a
called
fun
out.
kind of, like a feedback type stream and just have fun with it. But that would be like a thing we would do very rarely. But just like other stuff, like there's so much official shit, and we're not immortal. So
Yeah.
I don't really
As
think
the gray in my beard shows.
Yeah, I don't think we really have the time to go after like fan stuff that's not related explicitly to our community.
Yeah. Agreed.
Schwarza, Grand Cathay is here. Can't wait to make my army. Well, it's almost here, but yes.
Yeah, it will eventually be here.
Yeah, there can be a notorious amount of time between Games Workshop revealing something and it actually coming out. So, but we'll see. Who knows? With them, you never know. Tactical T, first time catching live, had a burning question for a long time. How does kinslaying affect dwarf wars, or do they never fight wars between themselves?
So they kind of don't. Now they have. There are
unless they do
in Warhammer's long lore of dwarves who do and have. And sometimes it can get really bitter and grudge-filled and dark, but normally it just doesn't happen because, as you say, kinslaying really affects dwarves. It's just not the done thing. So it generally has to be some sort of grudge that is exceedingly bitter for it to actually turn into outright bloodshed and conflict.
Yeah, I'll put it this way, that there are a number of dwarf characters that exist in the setting who have kinslayed, and it's like the core, deepest, most haunting sin of their entire character development. And they've seen some horrible shit, but that's like the worst thing. So It's one of those things that technically it does happen, but it's usually like someone was, not only was it bitter and horrible, but someone was also like inebriated or out of control. And it's an unforgivable no going back from act.
Yeah, so it's difficult, and that's good because conflict for the dwarves is something that is often forgotten by its writers, where they just go, all the dwarves work this oddly homogenous group, yet simultaneously all the kings sort of just do their own thing and ignore everyone else, which means that these conflicts exist and they should perhaps be better examined because the aftermath of these conflicts would be sheer horror, and that's fun.
Platinum Killer, thank you very much. Yep, Cathay, good times. Yep, yep. We also have quite a few Cathay episodes on Lorebeards that some of them are extremely fun. Actually, all of them are extremely fun. But we came up with some crazy theories for all sorts of different stuff. So please do check those out. Necromancer Cobalt. Now, a real question during Andy's Q&A. Someone asked about the current champions haven't done Skulltaker yet. Is it because they're not as impressive to draw Skulltaker's interest? We'll get to that. And with that, it's intro time.
Hey, finally! So, thankfully, given that we're already half an hour into our stream, my introduction for Skulltaker is not going to be as long as some of the many introductions that I've done in the past. And there is a reason for this. Skulltaker, in the greater scheme of Warhammer characters, is kind of new. He's kind of a baby. He hasn't been around for all that long. Now, when I say that, he is a couple of decades old, almost, but he is nevertheless, in the greater scheme of Warhammer characters, quite new, meaning that there's not a great deal written about him. And indeed, his very existence is only in place because of a decision that was made during the 6th edition of Warhammer. So let's dial back in time, because I do like to go back in time when we're doing our intros, and head back to the 4th and the 5th edition of the Warhammer game in the 90s. And in the 4th and the 5th edition of the game, the Chaos Army was one big box stroke book, depending on which version you went with. And the Chaos Army included everything Chaos. That was your beastmen, your warriors of chaos, the great marauders from the north, all of the demons, everything that was chaos was wrapped up into one giant chaos army. And if you wanted to make a Nurgle army from the Chaos Army box, you could. If you wanted to make a Tzeentch army, a Slaanesh army, a mixed power army, an army that was only interested in following all the chaos gods at once, you absolutely could. You wanted to do just beastmen, or beastmen and chaos warriors and demons, you absolutely could. Now, was there some issues if you had lots of things that hated each other? Yeah, but that was the fun of playing Chaos, in the same way that the fun of playing Orcs was often the animosity and your units turning on each other, which, whenever it happened and they were your opponents, was always hilarious. Never hilarious for the greenskin player, though. That's why their troops were cheaper. So that was chaos. But the 6th edition of the game, when it came out, whereas we move into the noughties, kind of changed everything. So we're now in the 2000s, and the studio decided that the Chaos Army should be split. And they split it into 2. On one side, you had the Hordes of Chaos, which came out in about 2002-ish. And then the other side, you had the Beasts of Chaos, which came out the year afterwards. And I remember when this happened. I remember because I was in a hiatus from Games Workshop. I had recently resigned for the 2nd time, I think it was. And I was having my little time away from Warhammer for a couple of years. And I passed by Games Workshop when the Beasts of Chaos army list came out. And I was like, well, that's a choice. And I couldn't help it. I went online to check what everybody thought. They hated it. They hated it with a passion because all of the Chaos players were now forced to split their armies. They now had to either have Beastmen armies or Chaos Warrior armies. Now, the Hordes of Chaos army, when it came out, was already controversial enough, but separating the Beastmen was generally not liked, except for the new players who hadn't been around for the previous generation. They were just like, here comes the Beastmen! I have Beastmen now, it's great! And there was a big question hanging around. Where the hell are all my demons? They just weren't there anymore. They were gone. Now, me personally, I hated this because I had an enormous number of demons in my collection. I had every greater demon, multiple examples of them, and all of the lesser demons. In fact, all of the demons. I just loved them. I had loads of the buggers. And they just weren't about. And they wouldn't be for some time yet because we head into the 7th edition of Warhammer. Now we're really late in the game for Warhammer. There's only 1 edition left of the game in existence. We head into the 7th edition of the game, 2006, the Battle for Skull Pass. Still no demons properly given to us. And it's not until we finally get our Demons of Chaos army list in 2008. I think it was in May as well, because I remember when this one came out, because I was working on Shades of Empire at the time, which is the book for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. But it was a book of transition in many respects, because it was
2007.
Are you sure? Is that the publication date, or is that when it was released? Is that the date of the book? Because I'm pretty sure it was released in 2008. Pretty sure. Although the copyright probably says 2007, because it will have been made at the end of the year. I might be wrong about that one.
No, you are correct. May 2008.
Oh! Love it! So 2008, Demons of Chaos book. And the Demons of Chaos book did something which had never been done before. It said, the demons can take to the Warhammer battlefield as an army by themselves. And this was in many respects in support to how Warhammer had changed how demons were used. Previously, Warhammer had the first incursion of chaos occur during the Cataclysm. And that was an enormous army of mortals with demon support because magic flooded the world. But in the 6th edition of the game, they changed it because they said there were no humans that could be the ever-chosen Morcar back then. They just didn't exist as they do later. So, hey, we can't do that. So it was a demon army that flooded the world. So you'll find in 6th and kind of in 7th edition as well, it's a demon army that floods the world during the Cataclysm. And demons take on everything. But they change this again later when they go, actually, no, there was mortals. And humans were elevated all the way back along with the elves and the dwarves. And the elves and the dwarves aren't really an elder race, separate from humans. They're exactly the same as humans, because they like to change the lore. But what's worth noting here is that they said that demons can take to the field, and demon armies could happen anywhere in the Warhammer world. This was a change in the lore, and people also hated this. The discussions online when this came out were intense. I remember it. I was there, and I had to watch it all fall apart as people were saying, this is stupid. Demons can't exist in the mortal realm without being summoned. Surely my demon armies need sorcerers to be summoning everyone, or corn blood priests, or something like that, which makes them happen. To which Games Workshop said, yeah, nah, demon armies are cool.
Fuck
that. Demon armies are awesome. We've got demon armies now. Live with it. But because we have a demon army, and it's an entire separate army, it needed to present something that had never been presented before for Warhammer. And that was demon characters. characters for demons. Now, there had been named demons before this. For example, Nakari, very famously, was tied to, loosely speaking, the blood of an Aryan, popping up in stories of Malekith or Malarian, as we now say today, or alternatively with stories of Teclis and Tyrion. That greater demon of Slaanesh would pop up here and there. And there was a couple of other greater demons mentioned here or there, particularly in individual stories. But we didn't have demon characters. We didn't have the equivalent of Karl Franz leading demons. That just didn't happen. Except now it does. Oh, yes. And we get ourselves a whole host of new characters for the demons. And in particular, we have, as we finally get there, Skulltaker. Now, Skulltaker was even then slightly controversial because of his name. And this is going to be a part of our later discussion as we move on with the stream, because Skulltaker's name is Uzul. Skulltaker's demonic name is Uzul. Now, this might not mean much to you. I'm going to discuss that later. In fact, we're both likely to be discussing this one later, because demonic names mean something, and mean something deep. They aren't something they can avoid. They aren't something they can change. They are a description in many respects of what they are, and true names are important. And Skulltaker has presented this great demon called Azul as, in many respects, Khorne's personal champion. The great wandering demon that goes from place to place, challenging folk and killing them. Strangely enough, taking their skulls for the skull throne of Khorne itself. And this demon is given quite the loose story. He basically is champion of Khorne, going from place to place. He's been in the High Elf lands, he's been down Bretonnia, he's been with Beastmen, he's been over Cathay, he's been everywhere, just challenging folk, and anyone that comes out to meet him, he takes on and he kills. He's one of those characters who, as is often the case in Warhammer, is given the story that is absolutely undefeatable, but, and is often the case with the big but, as we find out with, over the course of both army lists, the 7th and 8th edition of the Demons of Chaos army list, Skulltaker is beaten once. And of course, we all know who fucking does it. Because who do they always say is the one who's going to defeat the thing that they say can't be defeated? Who's going to be dwarfed this week? Skulltaker was dwarfed, because I will bring this one out, Star Trek references be damned. He was dwarfed by Sigmar. Sigmar was the only one that ever defeated him. And of course, Skulltaker bears that scar forever. Ah! So he has his own little magic items, a big cloak of skull and his big sword. We'll get to those in a moment. But this Slayer of Kings, this big champion of chaos, gets a page in a couple of books, gets a slight reference saying that there's a big skull harvest going on. He's off to get some skulls, and that's about it. And I thought when that was released, yeah, that's quite nice. It's pretty typical of the 6th to 7th editions of characters in that they drop a page, they'll release a model, they'll be done. They often don't write that much more inside the big long histories. It's not like the old army books from, say, the 4th edition, where they would present a special character and you would generally find that special character had about maybe 4 or 5 pages worth of extra detail in the background of the book. In this case, it's much more of a, here's a page, there's a demon character, it looks like a blood letter. Oh, yes?
I was going to say, to be fair to them on that, they added like 10 characters all at once.
Yes, they did. But it's very, because they needed to make a whole new slot for all the Chaos Powers. And I was like, yeah, that'll do. It'll be fine. The model was fine when it came out. But later on in that year, things got turned kind of upside down. And I'm guessing maybe around about, it was near the end of the year when the book came out, because I'd already handed in the last of my Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay work. The new edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition was very much on the Whisper and the Wind. And near the end of the year, so I'm going to guess around about October time, somewhere around there, Blood for the Blood God was released. So Blood for the Blood God by C.L. Werner, isn't it? C.L. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you. Just because I've memories for names are not quite as good as dates, apparently. So C.L. Werner was commissioned by Black Library to do a bunch of novels for the Chaos Hordes up in the north. And I think this was his 3rd one, Blood for the Blood God. And I was still writing for Warhammer, so I'd pretty much got every single book that came out. And I remember when it came out, and I read it. And I remember reading it at the time, and I had forgotten I'd read it until I reread it recently, and thinking, well, that was a thing that happened. Holy crap. And then promptly forgot about it until I prepped for this episode like a week and a bit ago, and I quickly reread it and went, oh, holy crap, I've read this. And it completely turns Skulltaker up on his head and doesn't present a demon, because as often is the case with the demons, they are not mortal, never were mortal. Demons are reflections, parts of their greater god. We've discussed this many times in previous streams, but they are not mortals, because mortals, when they elevate, are generally called demon princes. Now, demon princes come in all shapes and forms, but they do not normally represent themselves as a lesser demon, a bloodletter, because Skulltaker looks like and is a bloodletter. A bloodletter, if you don't know, is one of Khorne's many demons. And bloodletters have skin that's pretty much as strong as metal, burnished red, flesh bulging muscles, giant hell blades, enormous horns. They look somewhat like typical demons, as you would expect them from almost classic fairy tales in many respects. And they're horrendous close combat wombats. And Skulltaker is like the biggest, bestest version of those. That's how the character was presented. It's the best bloodletter. And this story said, no, Skulltaker's more. Skulltaker's quite a bit more. Actually, in life, Skulltaker was a czar of the Dolgans. Now, the Dolgans are one of the great tribes of the North. And he was once one of the great warlords of the North. And this was a long time ago. And he was charging around, kicking ass and chewing gum, as warlords in the North like to do. And eventually he finds himself in the lands of the Tong. And he takes Tong warlord after Tong warlord until eventually he meets with a chap called Tayog-Tai. Now, we'll be discussing the big saga of Verkus and everything that he did through the course of this stream. So I'm just going to sum it up into its most tiny moments for the intro. The book has Tayog-Tai absolutely kick living shit out of Verkus. He properly minces him and puts him up and stakes him like he was sitting in, I don't know, medieval Romania. And he gets staked right through his belly, his guts hang out, and he's left there to die, defeated by Tayog-Tai. But such was Verkus's rage, because, hey, Khorne does love a bit of rage. He wasn't going to be simply stopped by being staked. Oh, no. He pulls himself off that, guts trailing behind him, and with a somewhat convoluted story involving a greater demon, involving a big... We'll get to the whole story of that, because it's a story of Tayog-Tai himself, which is important for this. He ends up getting encapsulated in pretty much kick-ass chaos armor, gets himself a big, huge, nasty sword, wanders around the world doing things like, you know, killing dragons, murdering entire cities of Cathayans, that kind of thing, pops back to Tayog-Tai, has a big scrap, they kill each other. Oops. Except he can't die now, because of what had happened to him when he drags himself off, we're going to get to that and become the Skulltaker, and he comes back again later. Indeed, he comes back, centuries later to descend upon all of the descendants of Tayog-Tai. That story we will get to because it's important, but loosely speaking, it's what makes him the Skulltaker. It's what makes him, in truth, so exalted to Khorne, as during what is his extended, rather demonic mortal life, he pretty much wipes out, I'm going to say it, hundreds of thousands of mortals by himself. He's a one-man freaking army and takes an entire part of the northern realms into the realm of chaos for Khorne. And Khorne goes, well done, my son. You are now one of my demons. Go forth and Skulltake. And indeed, unlike the champions of Slaanesh, as were brought up at the beginning of the stream that we're giving head, he decided he would be taking them from that point onwards, and every single last skull that has come before him has been taken, bar Sigmar's. And that leads us to where we are today, where we have the 8th edition of Warhammer, which gives the definitive edition of every character until the old world comes along and rewrites it all. And that gives us a character who is 100% a demon. But we also have a novel that says that actually this demonic lesser demon, perfect example of it, exalted lesser demon if you wish, started as a mortal and was indeed elevated. He's not just simply a lesser demon, he is in fact a demon prince, in many respects a greater demon in his own right. All of these things are effectively game terms. They're not real terms in the setting, strictly speaking. And Skulltaker is one of the hardest that there is. Now, as we said at the beginning of the stream, if he goes against a proper big greater demon, he's in trouble. But he can go toe-to-toe with Tyrion. Toe-to-toe. Easily. Toe-to-toe with Tyrion. And how many greater demons has Tyrion terrorized? And that is pretty much the same for Skulltaker. He is peak champion, challenger of Khorne, and is seen by many as his personal champion. So, is that good enough of a... Let's see, it was a short one. That was only 15 minutes. That was super short.
So brief. So, are you feeling all right? So brief.
So brief. So, I think that covers everything. I've tried to be brief on the novel because the novel's got a lot of details that we're almost certainly going to be diving into.
Yes, we will.
But yeah, there's a lot to discuss here. And I also haven't said the other big thing that I think we're probably going to be discussing near the end.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that I actually want to touch on here that I find really, really interesting is that there is a funny thing about Skulltaker that I really, really like. And this is not a guaranteed answer. This is just something to consider for people listening, which is that there is actually a left open weirdness when the demons got brought back for 7th edition and 8th edition, which is you go reading the Bloodletter lore. One of the things that's really interesting about Bloodletters, we see this with Plague Bearers, is that there are mortal... So if you go back to some lore, it'll tell you the only humans that can become demons are demon princes. But then you'll very quickly find there are a lot of exceptions that pop up all over the place. Where if you died in Nurgle's Rot, you can become a Plague Bearer.
Yeah.
And in the 7th and 8th edition book, now, I really like how they do this because they don't say that murderers and killers and people that followed Khorne in life become bloodletters. They say it is believed that mortal warriors that followed Khorne, if they impress them enough, when they die, they will ascend to becoming a bloodletter. So if you're someone that really does not like the idea of like Demon Prince Uzul, you find it overly confusing, he could still just be a bloodletter. Like that could still work. Now, there are other things we're going to talk about that's going to add way more confusion to this, but one thing that we'd like to do on Lorebeards is to make the situation as complicated as possible, because that's where you get the most interesting stories. Or we just can't help ourselves. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's one of the two.
And I agree completely. And I think it's worth just reiterating here that chaos is a big, complicated mess. The battle game simplifies it and uses simple terms for everything. This is a lesser demon. This is a greater demon. This is a demon prince. They're kind of unique and kind of weird. But in truth, greater demons and demon princes aren't that different often. And in truth, exalted champions of various lesser demons are not that different from the greater demons either. It's a big mess. These terms are, in many respects, useless when we're discussing the lore, because Khorne himself doesn't give a fuck. They're just killers. And that's the big killer and that's the little killer. And if that one's doing as much as that one, there is no difference. It's not a stratified hierarchy of demons that Khorne very carefully administers to. And he sits there and says, "You're a duke. You're a prince. Oh, yes, go lead my forces. Away you go." No, it's very much might is right with Khorne. And each of the gods have got their own way of dealing with things. But might is right with Khorne. And Skulltaker has been exalted by Khorne because he's so bloody good at what he does. And that is one-on-one murdering his opponents. And he is astonishingly good at that. And that will make him, as far as Khorne is concerned, one of his most important demons, which rubbishes the idea of greater demons, demon princes being the most important, because Skulltaker is enormously important to Khorne.
Yeah, and just the last thought I'll leave you with before we kind of leave this in the dust. So I'm not going to worry about, though we'll talk about it a little bit more towards the end. It's really not important what Skulltaker's like official classification is, because it doesn't matter. From like a battle game perspective, yeah, sure, he's a herald. He's a super bloodletter. But from an in-universe perspective, those types of definitions immediately collapse in on themselves because they're just not important. And the best example I could give you is that the changeling, the shape-shifting goofball trickster, is officially classified as a horror, like a pink-blue horror type creature, which he is so
Bullshit.
Distantly, like that is the like okay most definition I can give for that character. So take that and just throw it away. It doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't matter.
He's basically your coolest bloodletter in a trench coat. He kicks ass. He's a lot of fun.
So that being said, I'm going to get caught up on the little super chest that came in, and then we're going to get talking about specific topics. We're going to start. I think we'll start with kind of like his mortal life, and we'll talk about Virtus.
Sounds good.
Get through that.
Virtus it is.
Sean Schultz, has T'Challa battled Skulltaker? Unlikely. We will get into. I know a lot of y'all have questions of like, why hasn't Skulltaker fought everybody on the roster? And we'll get into that in just a minute.
Absolutely.
Just hang in there. I promise we'll talk about it. Bohemian Sexy, the disgusting amount of things I would do to a great unclean in order for Andy to be released from Nurgle's grip. Hope you're feeling well today, sir.
I'm actually feeling pretty damn fine today. Sadly, things are not necessarily quite as well across the Law household at this end, but I'm currently, right at this moment, feeling pretty good. In fact, feeling so good that today, before Lorebeards, I was doing a picture of Felix Jaeger. And I mean, it's almost finished. I've got it sitting on my screen right in front of me. I might even flash it up on screen at one point because it's quite fun. I'm currently doing the hair. It's a complete mess, but yeah, I'm getting there. I've also done something slightly controversial. I've also given the Rune of Dragon Slaying on Caragul because bloody should be there.
Yeah, I mean it should be. I don't think it's that controversial. 10,000 ants. What are the requirements for Skulltaker's appearance? Can you show up in the middle of the Ice Court of the High King's throne room? So generally speaking, and so Skulltaker has like a motif, you could almost say, which is that he tends to show up very dramatically from a distance. Like he kind of wanders in. He is a wanderer trope.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rare that he just like pops into existence and surprises you. There's a lot more of like the Terminator dread, he's coming for you and nothing can stop him type character.
In fact, I'll add that. Have you seen It Follows? It's a horror movie from a wee while back. It's about to get a sequel because if you have, now you know what he's like. That is him. Although it's worth noting in the novel, he does it follows his way all the way through the novel in a ridiculous fashion, but he also does it in a big fuck off wolf.
Yeah, we'll get to the novel stuff because there's some interesting moments in that book that are genuinely very funny. So I would say, generally speaking, if you're writing a story with him, he should never just pop up. He should always be something that everybody knows he's coming. There's word about him coming, and he's literally just killing everybody in front of him until he gets to his target. Now, there are ways to deal with him, which we'll talk about. There are rules that he kind of seems to follow, but if you want the corn character that's likely to pop out of nothing and get you, that's Karanak. Karanak is the ambushing hunter predator type. Skulltaker is more like the slow, unstoppable spear that's coming for your heart type thing.
On a juggernaut.
Yeah, good old Kultira. So
not necessarily that slow.
Yeah, not compared to Karanak, relatively slow.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He is, I think, arguably one of the demonic characters in the Warhammer world that you can easily justify as being able to manifest well outside of the standard wells of magic that are normally required to maintain demons, or the spells that are normally required to maintain demons. He is drawn to conflict and blood. And that conflict and blood is the very magic that empowers him. And that means that the great wars that occur across the Warhammer world as a whole are going to attract him. And he will turn up to some of them and he will challenge his way through them, murderalizing anything that accepts said challenge. So, he's if you want to use him in any of your games, an easy character to use in almost any game where the horrors of war have become a reality.
Oh yeah, he'd be great for that. So Virkus of the Dolgan. Now I was like, Dolgan, because obviously if you know the Tarmacon series, the Dolgan play a really key role in that. Sail the Faithless is the big bad of the Dolgans. He's a great sorcerer. So the very brief version of this, because I want to focus mostly on Virkus, is that he is an interesting character in the book. He's very much an antagonist that when he's introduced as a mortal, he's a big badass in like heavy chaos armor. He kind of is sort of almost like your stereotypical chaos lord. He's leading a bunch of different tribes that are of the Kurgan people. He's leading a bunch of different tribes, and he has this little coalition that he gets together, and he goes up against Teocte, who's leading the Tong. And Teocte has gathered a way bigger army. And to say I've
gone all blurry. Look at that. It's worth noting that's not quite right. It's close. Because he defeated tons of Tong first. Tons of them. And Teocte was almost separate with his own kingdom, doing his own thing, completely separate to the rest of the Tong, and he was absolutely in control there. And he fights his way through all the other Tong before he eventually... I've gone completely blurry. This is really annoying. Hello, yes. I'm over here, camera. There we go. I'm back. So Teocte was almost the end of a long stream of Tong murdering that he had done. And Teocte sat at the end of that. So...
yes,
it's a bigger conflict.
It's at the end. It's the end of his quest. I don't know if ascension's the right word, but it's the end of a quest that he believes the gods have prophesized for him. He's at the end of this great journey, his path to glory. There we go.
Path to glory.
Yeah,
perfect.
And he arrives on this battlefield, and it says that that Teocte comes spilling out of the waves. Where it's like, oh, the greatest of the Tong, this king of the Tong is returned to the mortal world, where he's come out of the waste, and when the Tong come out of the waste, it's a big fucking deal, because it's rare that they come down. And Teocte comes down, there's this big epic fight. Virkos's army gets absolutely butchered. Like, it's barely a fight.
Yeah.
But Virkos himself is very difficult to put down. He's the last person standing. He's still killing people. And Teocte's like, all right, I'm going to deal with this guy. And Teocte is scared of him. There's a moment where Teocte sees Virkos fighting and actually feels himself being like, oh. And he takes his big demon sword, Blood Eater, which is a very big part of the book. A stupid name for a sword, in my opinion. But he fights him, and what's interesting is Teocte, to put it simply, he's kind of a dick. He's a very interesting character. I actually like him a lot, but he's a dick because when he fights Virkos, because Virkos made him scared, instead of killing him, he stuns him by smacking him really hard in the head, knocks him out, and then the whole thing with Andy where he gets a bronze stake and he impales him after he impales the rest of his army on wooden stakes. But he's like, oh, well, you're the general, so you get a bronze stake because I'm respectable.
Yeah, he respects him. Bronze stake. I mean, that's respect, man.
To put it, so he gives him basically a dishonorable death. He doesn't give him a warrior's death, which is a really important aspect of a lot of the cultures. And the book presents it very much as part of the Kurgan and the Tong culture, where to die in battle is great. To die being slowly impaled on a spike and then eaten alive by like various animals, not a good way to go. You're not going to get to go to the honorable ancestors' halls and yada yada. So it's a disrespectful move.
It is.
And as Virkos is dying, Teocte does what no one should ever do if you know that there's a plot revolving around you, which is that he leaves instead of making sure that he died. And Virkos survives. Now, this is due to the influence of a bloodthirster, due to one of the parts of the book that's actually quite fun, which is the whole thing about Teocte defeats a bloodthirster, which, holy shit, good for him. He kicks the shit out of a bloodthirster named Krathin, the Lash of Corn, and he basically turns Krathin into a forge. I'm not going to bother explaining all the metaphysics of it, but just roll with it.
One. He kills a greater demon, and an enormous one at that, and its entire carcass is turned into this enormous forge, which is what Blood Eater is forged from. And Blood Eater is not just simply a handy sword. It effectively makes him immortal. He can't be defeated except by that greater demon, meaning that he is now effectively immortal, which is why good old Virkos had no chance.
Yeah, and now, C.L. Werner, I thought, did a really great job of that. When Teocte bound Krathin, he made a pact with him, but he didn't word it very well, which is classic. He literally did the thing you should always do. If you ever have a demon in your roleplay games, never let your party make a bargain without it being fucked up, because demons are tricky sons of bitches.
Yeah, and even the coronate ones.
Yeah, and Teokte basically manages to bind him to an oath that's something along the lines of that he must do everything in his power to help mortals. But he didn't specify himself as the only mortal. So the demon, Craithin is basically able to twist it so that his altar can be used by any mortal. Any mortal being can come to his forge, and he must do what this mortal wants. So, therefore, he can help anybody. It doesn't have to be Teokte. He can help anybody. And the big thing with Teokte's story that was super fun is that he's a very unique tongue because Teokte does not want to conquer the world. That is not his goal. Teokte wants to build a nation. He goes to the Shadowlands, which is the land just south of the Chaos Wastes, kind of like a little bit above / near a little bit west of the Eastern Steppes. And he goes there and says, I'm going to build a nation here. I'm going to build, like, he starts making fields. He starts building castles. He's building, like, terraced farms. Like, he's literally building a brand new nation of men. And Khorne gets pissed because this is not what he was supposed to do.
The demon that's being used to enforce it is also pissed.
Yeah, so all the Khorne guys are just furious because this was not the bargain. He was supposed to go stack skulls in Khorne's name, and Teokte knows this. He betrays Khorne and says, I've got this super sword that says I can't be killed, so fuck you, Khorne, you can't get me. Which works out predictably. Where Craithin is essentially, thanks to Khorne's grace, able to reach out and find an individual that hates Teokte as much as he does. And he finds Virkos impaled on this spike, and he fills him with enough power that Virkos, to his credit, drags himself up a barbed 20-foot stake of brass, or bronze, sorry, pulls himself off, falls to the ground, and shatters half his bones. Which, Andy, since I was talking about earlier, and then he crawls from where he was impaled
in the Shadowlands.
All the way to the Chaos Waste, which you're not doing that without a greater demon's help. But he makes his way there, throws himself into the forge, gets remade into a pseudo demon.
Now he's still mortal.
He is still mortal.
He's still mortal, but he's a regenerating mortal.
Yeah, he regenerates like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like there are literal scenes where like a part of him gets like blown off and it just starts pulling itself back together immediately, and everyone fighting him's like, oh, this is not fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he reaches this greater demon's forge, and the greater demon, who is super pissed, obviously, with his ex-defeated person, the person who defeated him, and empowers him with his own magical sword, a big black blade, and his own set of chaos armor, and sends off the new Skulltaker to go and take skulls. But interestingly, he doesn't go straight to Teokte. He has a good period of time where it's enough time away from there that he builds up a reputation that has arrived back at the kingdom of Teokte, the kingdom of the Tong, and a reputation that the Skulltaker is undefeated and has killed everything in his path, ranging from demons, greater demons at that, of Slaanesh in particular, over to entire Cathayan cities, over to what else was there? There was
he kills a two-headed chaos dragon.
The dragon Shanoff, or Shaneth, or so. I think.
Yeah, because he takes both of its skulls and carries them all the way to Khorne's throne room,
and drags them into throne room in the realm of chaos. So has gone from wherever he was and dragged them all the way back to the north to put it directly into the throne room in the Brass Citadel. So yeah, he's quite the chap, and he's still mortal, with the benefits of a greater demon of Khorne behind him before he eventually arrives back to take on Teokte for a second time.
Yep, and he dies. But he kills Teokte. He deals a mortal blow. Like, he dies first, but he deals enough damage to Teokte that Teokte also dies.
It's a classic demonic deal here, in that the only person that can really take out Teokte is the greater demon is bound and dead, and the weapons that he forges. So he can't die, and equally the only thing that can kill Skulltaker is the greater demon that's given them everything. So basically both their weapons are the immovable forces, meaning that both kill the other. It was an almost inevitable outcome. But that blessing didn't end with Teokte. It sadly passes on to his heirs.
Yeah, now one of the things I actually really like that C.L. Werner does here is that it's never directly explained. Like, it's never explained from an omnipresent perspective how Skulltaker comes back after he's killed. There is a shaman character in the book who basically says, like, well, Khorne apparently gave him a do-over. Like, he died, and Khorne said, nope, I hate these guys. I want this place for them betraying me. Like, Teokte owes me this domain, so I'm going to let you try one more time. Because the whole thing of the book is basically the characters are like, well, he died once. What's the point of killing him if he can just come back? And the shaman says, well, Khorne let him come back, I think. So if we kill him again, he'll be so disgraced, Khorne won't let him come back. And then he'll just be dead forever. But I like that it's an in-universe perspective because it doesn't really answer it. Like, we don't know if it was Skulltaker truly couldn't be put down permanently, or if it was kind of a Valkia situation where Khorne was like, I'm going to bring you back because there's something I still want you to do. Which, to be fair, Khorne, with, like we say with Valkia, has done that before. Khorne does have a habit of resurrecting mortals.
I would say that this actually speaks to the character of Khorne a bit. And I know that we often discuss the gods as these ephemeral, chthonic entities that should never be discussed in an anthropomorphized way. But nevertheless, Khorne has, in terms of his mortal realm presence, a clear character. We discussed this to a degree over the Brass Citadel stream. We discussed it. We discussed it in a few other places. But I am going to suggest that Khorne was clearly at some point badly defeated. Definitely, he very much believes in coming back and winning after being defeated. So this is par for the course. I would suggest that Verkus actually dies and is brought back by Khorne at this point, because it's very much what Khorne has done and
Valkia
seems to have done before.
Valkia dies and brought back. Scar Bloodwrath, his whole gimmick is he dies and keeps coming back. So for Verkus to do it, actually, if anything, keeps him in line with mortal champions of Khorne. So anyway,
particularly those who impress him, and let's be honest,
those who impress him. Like, if you're a loser, then get fucked.
The easy push aside of, you know, if it hadn't been for the greater demon, he would never have made it, is probably true, but it's not necessarily true, because it still requires Verkus to have the will to pull himself off that brass spiky stake and to drag himself what appears to have been scores, possibly hundreds of miles, into the realm of chaos itself, up to this demon and say, I am now ready. That is mental. And even if he had support, it's still mental. He's got his little coach at the side, the greater demon, going, come on, boy, you can do it. It's not that much further. Come on. And he does. So that in and of itself is extraordinarily impressive. And then his life events after that also extraordinarily impressive. Khorne is impressed with this mortal and is clearly enjoying the benefits of the many bloods that he has taken.
Yeah, plus there is an element of Khorne that could be interesting sometimes, where Khorne has a very, I would almost call it hypocritical sense of fairness, but he does have a sense of fairness. And for Khorne, watching the fight between Verkus and Teokte, where Teokte is quite literally invincible, like, it's not possible for Verkus to beat him, but Verkus still scares him. Teokte still thinks there's a chance he could die, even though he can't. Khorne can respect that. There is something there, because Khorne, the whole thing about, like, magic is Khorne tends to dislike when people. Khorne has a very unique form of honor that I think people tend to get twisted with martial honor, which is not what it is. It's a very particular form of almost using magical systems to avoid potential harm or potential loss. Like, if there's no genuine threat to you because of magic or sorcery or magical items, Khorne often will look at that and be like, that's not fair. It's not fair.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that Verkus, when he first approaches, so when he's the Dolgan warlord before he becomes a Skulltaker, and then pulls himself off of that spike and pulls himself all the way to the realm of chaos. During that period, it's quite possible Khorne's not even aware. It's the greater demon. It's greater demon who is absolutely just egging him on. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And when he almost does it, when he really does give it a good go, Tai is threatened and even slightly scared, the greater demon is exultant because the one that defeated him, Tai, who, let's be honest, defeated a bloodthirster in close combat.
Tai is fucking bonkers. Yeah,
Tai is actually bonkers. And this greater demon is pissed. And the elevation of Verkus by this greater demon is very possibly purely this greater demon. But of course, Khorne is nothing more than his greater demons as well, and it's all him. And there's lots of ways we can view this. That's one of the reasons why we prefer not to personify the Chaos Gods, because they're not really thinking soul entities in that regard. But the material realm, the things that live in the material realm are. It's a very different entity in the realm of chaos. But this greater demon is clearly wrapped up in some of the mortal stuff on the edge of the realm of chaos, just beyond the Shadowlands. So it does have a thinking mind, a very clear thinking mind, and it uses Verkus to bring down Tai, but it doesn't bring down at all his empire, because as it turns out, his empire gets split amongst his kids, and his kids, because they're not worshipping one chaos god or another, worship all of them. And the descendants of Tai are as invulnerable as he is. And as hard as he is. Yeah, it's proper daft.
One of the things I love about him is it's like, oh, well, how does he unite this kingdom? And it talks about how there were 8 tribes, and he gives each of them a weapon made from the corpse of this greater demon. But they're not just Khornate weapons. There's a Nurgle weapon, a Slaanesh weapon, a Tzeentch weapon. Or no, I think there's not a Slaanesh weapon. I think the Slaanesh.
I don't know. The Slaanesh doesn't appear at all. There's a bit.
No, the Snakemen were the Slaanesh guys, but they're later.
But they're
unrelated. But there's a Tzeentch weapon, a Nurgle weapon, a Khorne weapon, and then a bunch of like undivided-ish weapons.
Yeah.
And each of the tribes gets one of these weapons as you swear fealty to me, you get this bullshit weapon that makes you invincible. And the book goes out of its way to say they are literally invincible. Yeah. The only, their whole thing is the only thing that could kill these people is someone wielding one of these weapons. But the chieftains aren't willing to kill each other because there's a whole...
It breaks their loose... Yeah, they kind of don't do it. But they do die of old age. And they pass on their weapons to their children. And it has to be done in a particular way. There's a nasty ritual involving hearts and everything. It's horrible. So there is a lot of power in this particular kingdom, and it is, largely speaking, something that stands for centuries, possibly 1,000 years or more. So
they say Skulltaker is away for 512 generations, which is weirdly specific. And also not at all
really, really long, because that's like 6,000 years. It's almost too long.
Well, it's like maybe if a generation is 20 years at best, it's like 1,000 years.
No, it's
but
not.
Like,
no, it's like 512 times 10 is
10,000. Yeah,
that's 10,000 years.
So I don't know what that sorcerer was smoking. I could believe like 500 years. I could believe that.
But they are in the Shadowlands. They're right by the realm of chaos.
True.
So it's very possible time itself has begun to break around where they are. Almost all of the core characters that are inside this book have some form of mutation or another. They are all.
Oh, the mutations in the book are so cool. There are so many mutations all over the place.
Which is cool.
Anyway, so the Skulltaker returns. And so we have Virkus the Skulltaker Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. And he basically goes around being the Terminator. Just literally, you get every once in a while, you'll get a chapter where he just shows up at one of the 8's little area where they're at and just relentlessly marches his way towards them until he kills everyone in his way, until he catches them and kills them.
This is where he kills, and I'm not even building this up a bit. He literally kills thousands, entire armies by himself.
Oh yeah,
he's got a big wolf, right? His big corny wolf.
Yeah, that was the one thing that made me laugh is they're like, oh, give him a demonic steed that sounds a lot like a juggernaut, but it's a wolf juggernaut, not a typical juggernaut.
Yeah.
So like, I can't tell if it's supposed to be Kultiran and C.L. Werner just decided to make his own unique version of Kultiran, or if it's supposed to be like a different creature, because it's definitely a demonic steed. Like it's definitely a demonic steed. That thing is ridiculous in that book.
It doesn't need to be demonic. It could be a mortal mutated thing. I mean, but like Skulltaker himself, it doesn't die.
Yeah, no, they're both bullshit. So
complete bullshit. I can't exaggerate enough. I can't stress, pardon me, enough just how ridiculous Skulltaker is. You know, it doesn't matter what they throw at him. 500 warriors charge him. 500 warriors are dead.
Yeah, I think the only time in the book where he fights something where it's implied that if it hits him, it could kill him is a fucking giant. And of course, he kills the giant by himself.
He kills the giant anyway.
But because he just dodges. It's like the only time he bothers dodging the entire book, which is very
he
funny.
fights really well because all the way through the book, he's parrying blows, moving to the side.
Oh yeah, he's doing great. But it's like
he's clearly
he's just like I'll fuck you, whatever.
Yeah, he outfights almost everything. It's not just bullshit because he survives all the blows. He takes almost no blows. He takes almost no hits at all. He walks through entire armies, murdering everything. It is, I'd say, one of the most ridiculous, over-the-top examples of a character that Warhammer ever presents. Because if we got Anarian and his description, he did that once when he came out from the Chaos, when he came out from the pyramid, came down and wiped out a Chaos Horde by himself because the god was inside him, and then went off and avatared for a bit where it turned into almost normal warfare. But no, this guy literally kills everything without any real sense of danger, and everyone becomes absolutely petrified of him.
Yeah, there's a part of this story that I fucking love where C.L. Werner, I think, does something that I'm so glad he does it. So there's a part pretty early on in the book where the main tribe, which Kazavugs, they are which they're like, oh, we're the direct descendants because we're like an actual Tong tribe of Teokte, as opposed to like one of the other tribes that swore loyalty to them. But they're sitting around and they're talking about Skulltaker. So their shaman is telling them the lore of Skulltaker. Essentially, he's exposition dumping.
He's lore bearding.
Yes, he's lore bearding. And one of the things that he said that I loved is he goes, you've all heard about the Skulltaker. You've heard about the demon, the creature that grabs someone's skull and burns the flesh off of it to claim their skull. And as he's talking about Skulltaker, he's describing him in different forms. He's not describing the guy they're dealing with in the book, who is a man wearing metal armor that regenerates. He's describing the Skulltaker from the tabletop game.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and when you read it initially, you may look at that and go, oh, well, he's just wrong. No, he's not. Because when you get to the end of the book, which we'll get into when Virkus becomes the Skulltaker from the tabletop game, what you realize is he's right. There are people who in the past have encountered the Skulltaker of the future. The demon Skulltaker has already been running around killing people. Even while Virkus, the Skulltaker, was doing his own thing, which is demons. It's awesome. Not enough authors remember that demons do that.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a core component of what we're going to be discussing as we head towards the end of the stream.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. That Skulltaker, he is not in one place in time. He is all over the fucking place.
But the mortal is in one place in time, and he is the mortal who pulled himself off. We just can't stop saying it.
Removed himself from the stake.
Removed himself from the stake, moved up, and was blessed basically by the Bloodthirster to be as powerful as Tayog Tai. Wandered the world for a while before returning and killing Tayog Tai. He regenerates eventually and comes back, and many centuries later, possibly 1,000 years, possibly more, it's difficult to determine how long it is, he returns back to the lands of Tayog Tai, and he takes out everyone. Literally everyone. Killing, and it's basically like taking out the Empire, or perhaps at least one part of it, like all of Ostland. And he does it by himself, completely wiping them all out. And so impressed is Khorne by this, quite frankly, ridiculous feat that all of that part of the Shadowlands is brought into Khorne's realm because of the success of Skulltaker. And Skulltaker becomes the Skulltaker of the Chaos Army list.
Yeah, one of the things that I do love about the book as well is there's one character that could have stopped him. One. But in the moment where he could have stopped Skulltaker, he instead gives in to hatred. So he doesn't, which is great. That's so perfect. Where he gives into
it's so corny.
Yeah, it's so. Thanks, Andy. But yeah, so he ascends, and it very much stinks of Demon Prince Ascension, but I also like that the book never refers to it as that. It's just that, like, he offers the 8 skulls of the 8 descendants of Teote into the Bloodthirster's altar, which frees the Bloodthirster, so Krathen the Lash just escapes back into the realm of Khorne to go do bloodthirstery things. And like Andy said, this entire chunk of the Shadowlands gets ripped out of reality into the realm of Khorne, which C.L. Warner also does a really good job describing, because he describes how it's not like the land itself is like picked up and absorbed into it. It's way more mentally fucky than that. It is a super fucked scene because there's a character who's in there that gets sucked in. You see his point of view. And so all these guys get sucked to the realm of Khorne, and good old Virkas now becomes Uzul.
Mm-hmm. He gets his true name. He becomes the Skulltaker in truth that we know from the army list. He is elevated. Now, does that mean he's a demon prince? Yes. Does that mean he's a bloodletter? Yes. Does that mean he's a lesser demon? Yes. Does that mean he's a herald of Khorne? Yes. Does that mean he's a greater demon in some respects? As demons go, he's pretty greater. Yes. He's just a demon of Khorne. There's no need for us to sit here and go, oh, he's this or he's that. And he is, relatively bluntly here, exalted by Khorne. Khorne loves this guy. Khorne, in many respects, he is Khorne. It's one of the things that happens when you become elevated. You become not just a part of the god, you so closely represent what that god is that you almost can't help but elevate, because you have done everything that that god is. He is effectively a bit of Khorne, and he's that bit of Khorne that just does not stop. It follows. He is the Terminator. He will not be stopped. He is going to hunt you down in a very different way to, say, a flesh hound. He's going to be in the back of his juggernaut, and when he's coming for you, there is nothing you can do to stop him in terms of the standard martial practice. But you can do one clever thing. Just run, because you can.
Yeah, so Uzul, classic Skulltaker.
Should we take our super chat?
Oh, yeah, super chat. Yes, that's a good idea.
Okay, let's get those in.
Aaron, is there a Slaaneshi demon named Butt Taker? Well, at least that's a unique spin on the question everyone's been asking. Probably. Probably. Mr. Grumbler, good evening.
I think we missed one from 10,000 Ants, or did we get that one?
No, remember we talked about him showing up and how you could avoid him, and like that he shows up. That's where you made the It's Follow reference.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Grumbler, good evening. Usual complaints aside, how do you create usual complaints aside? That's funny. How do you create a coronate vampire, one who don't care pros/cons, is a true believer? So when you say usual complaints, I suppose you mean if you were forced.
Fuck off.
Yeah. So the two options would very simply be you take a coronate character and they are given the blood kiss, and in your particular version, your hammer, they just become a vampire, but they maintain their beliefs and such. There are vampires in the core setting who maintain their immortal beliefs. That's not that unusual. It's not super common. A lot of vampires usually tend to change perspective, but there are some vampires that are still religious. And still acknowledge the god. So you could go that angle. Although
I would say that you do have one probable issue here with that particular character, because the blood doesn't flow. The blood is drunk. The blood is absorbed, the blood is used. So you might find that particular character is actually in somewhat of an existential crisis, because it's not just killing things that matters. It's the big splash of blood. It's the pulling out of the bones. It's the big display of it all. And you're not going to have that, because the vampire needs something that the god that they supposedly worship also wants. So the big offerings that you would normally be making aren't going to be made with the same, let's say, depth, or quality. That being the case, you could end up with a really fun, conflicted character who both wants to shed blood but also wants to take it. So there could be something fun there.
Yeah. And you could always do, I didn't like the way they handle it because I'm just not a fan of it, but you could do the end times thing where you have a blood dragon vampire, which is the easiest way to do it, who ends up like you could have it where they are like maybe they are fighting so many Khornate champions and they become so impressed with them that they start to try and follow that line, or in a pursuit of martial mastery, they become enamored with the way of Khorne and are following it in a way. They would probably have a fairly unique understanding of Khorne, especially because if they're a moderately educated vampire, unless you're really hammering it, Khorne isn't really going to like them. So this would be a character that would like Khorne for more of personal or aesthetic reasons, but doesn't expect anything from Khorne. And is just doing it because there's something about it that calls to them, but that would very much be like a personality quirk, or there's an obsession or a background there, which for a vampire could be very, very fun to explore without even needing to go that much into Warhammer. But if you want there to be a relationship between Khorne and the vampire, you're going to want to change your Chaos Gods a good bit.
Yeah, because that relationship isn't going to work with the Chaos Gods as they currently stand frightfully well.
Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, hopefully that helps a bit.
Darius Road, for the tubes that live very far north, the tubes? Tribes, I think is what I was going to say.
The tribes.
Are they effectively Chaos Warbands that have Chaos Warriors, Chosen Knights, etc.? So it depends on the tribe. C.L. Werner's book actually kind of tackles this, where when it talks about where like the Kurgan tribes tend to have like actual Chaos Warriors in the classic sense running around, where they've got like the big heavy black plate armor. But like the Tong tribes do not at all. They wear a very, very different kind of unique armor. And they have a very different relation. One of the things that his book does really, by the way, the book is called Blood for the Blood God. You can find it as an ebook on the Black Library website, or if you want, you can try and get a physical copy of that, or the Warrior of the Chaos Waste Omnibus, I think. It's the one with like a generic Chaos Warrior on the front. But one of the things his book does really, really well is it shows how different all the tribes are. How they have very different perspectives on the gods. They have very different perspectives on faith. There are some among them who like, they don't think very kindly of the Chaos Gods. They just kind of acknowledge them as like a notable presence that kind of has to be given offerings, but they don't actually really like them that much. Honestly, the main tribe, the Kasavigs, who are kind of the more true descendants of Teokte, they don't like the Chaos Gods. They really don't.
I really liked it for that. It was something that was taken up quite a bit with the Tome of Corruptions version all the way back in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. The idea that the Chaos Gods were just something that had to be dealt with for many of the people. They're just gods that are out there, and they are to be worshipped, used, ignored, if possible, or alternatively fought off. And in many respects, it's the very fact that the Tong had so successfully held Khorne back for so long that ended up with Skulltaker even existing.
Yeah, and also the other last thing to really say there is, like, generally speaking, a Chaos Warband is not a singular tribe. That's really rare. Normally, it's like, there's usually kind of a trope of that when someone ascends to the rank of Chaos Warrior, they will leave their tribe and they'll go join a Chaos Warband. Now, sometimes full tribes will get caught up in like a big invasion. So like the big fuck you, like the spring drivings or like a big crazy invasion will often have an entire tribe come down. But most of the time, it's just like little pockets of individuals that get together. It's pretty rare to see like giant armies of Chaos Warriors. Most of the time, they're more like bands of like dozens of guys. As opposed to these, like even Archaon, when Archaon was traveling around, for most of his journey, it was like him and the Swords of Chaos, which was like him and like 20 other guys. It's not that often that you see those big hordes unless it's time for an invasion, and then it's a banding together of a bunch of unrelated parties. So hopefully that helps. Biofoot, could Skulltaker take a skull so large that he couldn't take the skull? Could he? Yes.
Yes.
Because demons metaphysics, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I mean, he carried two individual dragon skulls somehow to Khorne's throne, so clearly he can, because there's no way that using normal physics he picked those things up and walked with them. Darius Rhodes, weird question. How tall are regular humans in Warhammer? I've seen artists depict them as tall as elves, which are 6'5". Also, how tall? You think elves are only 6'5"? You're cute. Also, how tall would greatswords or Middenheimers be since they're the tallest men? I'll let Andy deal with this.
Okay, so humans come in all shapes, sizes, and forms in the Warhammer world. There is no easy. Oh, the average is 5'9" for a human. Nah. Each of the different tribes have got their own standards, and you are correct. Some of them are big. The Teutigans, for example, their average male height is around 6'1" area, around about there. Where if we go down to, say, the Umberigans, it's all the way down to around about 5'8", 5'9". If we go over to, say, someone like the, just using the Empire, if we go to, say, the Burgundians from the south, they're all the way down to about 5'6" on average. There's lots of different versions. So going through these, how tall are the great swords? So great swords are one of the units of the Empire, of which one of the most famous ones being from Karaberg, the Karaberg great swords. And they're often the tallest men who are using them. And that means you'll get people in there who are, say, 6'5". That's not uncommon for a human. I've got several friends who are 6'5" tall. Several. So it's not that hard to get that many people in that place. I'm relatively tall. I'm 6'1". Middenheimers are a far taller people than, say, for example, those who are around them. So again, 6'5" would not be that uncommon. So yeah, it changes. Now, when we move to the realms, it changes even more and fluctuates even more, particularly when you start adding mutations that aren't normally visible, as in someone who's just an extra foot taller because he's a mutant, or two, or in some cases, maybe 3 or 4. Take a look at the Norse warlord that's depicted in, it's at the Praetorian army list.
Egil Steersworn?
Yeah, that's the one. And he's huge. And that's not because humans are huge per se, it's because he's a mutant. But yeah, you get them at all different heights.
Cody Smith, especially pulling yourself off to become a demon prince is more of a Slaneshi thing. Get out! Get out! Tyrant.
Yeah, we set ourselves up for that one, let's be honest.
Yeah, we did. No, you did. I did not do anything. I will not accept culpability in this. Tyrant 25. Okay, I found my line where Warhammer is too over the top for me. Oh, I mean, yeah, in some ways it's a goofy novel.
When I read it for the first time, I was like, this is daft. Daft. Second time round, I was like, yeah, this is daft. Yeah, you're right. It is over the top, but it's nevertheless quite fun. The book is massively over the top. It's very much a dialed up to 11 story of an individual who is effectively immortal, taking out an entire, not just tribe, but an entire kingdom by himself and claiming it for one Chaos God. That's at heart what Skulltaker is about, and the various characters who attempt to stop him and fail. It's not a clever book in the bigger scheme of things. The story is very, very simple, and it is massively over the top when you actually speak out what happens. But I think he does a pretty good job of showing throughout it that the characters involved are not necessarily of the belief that they are going to fail, or indeed that Skulltaker himself is going to succeed. And Skulltaker is fighting all the time. He's not just wandering through them like an implacable force, like an unfeeling god. Quite the opposite. He's fighting hard, really hard.
Yeah, it feels like he earns it most of the fights.
He does fight exceedingly hard. I think the only thing that the book doesn't really do is it completely forgets that Chaos doesn't care about your gender. And it seems to have very much laid out that the only people who have got a chance of getting big up near the Chaos Wastes are men, because all of them are men. The women are nothing more than there to have children, except for one sorceress character. And
who's
it is
not, yeah. It doesn't actually count.
She literally
doesn't count.
And yeah, the whole thing is it forgets that in the North, Chaos doesn't care if you're male, female, or anything in between. You just have to exist somehow. And many of the Chaos Warriors that we know of as Chaos Warriors are women or are something else, particularly because something else is very common up there. So, yeah, I was a bit disappointed that it was so massively male-centric.
Akiyoshi, cheers, Andy. So, Deck, the Skulltaker makes sense as a faction leader in Total War. Virkas was a chieftain. Would he gather followers or go off solo? So, I mean, Skulltaker, as he's portrayed in, like, the army books, like even when it literally talks about if Skulltaker shows up on a battlefield, it's just because he like happens to show up. He never really leads an army. He more just kind of shows up and just happens to get caught up in whatever's going on. But he's there as an incident, not because he's leading anyone. That being said, Total War uses
everything.
It takes a lot of liberties for the sake of making a cool game. So for the sake of if you had to pick a group of characters to lead Khornate factions, is Skulltaker a good choice? Yes. He's iconic, he's cool, fine.
He's well cool.
Super Orlok. I have always seen Khorne as an evil chthonic version of the King of the Gods trope in real life mythology, someone who makes judgments.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at the wider pantheon, he isn't. He just isn't. He doesn't play the judgmental role. He doesn't care about who right or wrong. He just cares about the blood flowing. So whilst I could take that line and maybe run with it a bit, if you're taking Khorne as written, he isn't this. If you want the evil chthonic King of Gods trope, real life, it's Azurin, the elven god. He is the judge, and he is not a nice guy by any stretch of the imagination. So there's already an entity that kind of fulfills this role. And when you look at Khorne and the childish strops that Khorne generally pulls, because a lot of Khorne is really childish, really teenage, really over the top, really angsty, and I get to get what I want. How dare you stop me from having this land? I'm going to throw champion after champion at you until it's mine. Ah! He tends to be far too childish to really pull on the judgmental role, I think.
Yeah, so you could do this if you're, especially if you're dealing with like chaos characters trying to interpret their experiences with the Chaos Pantheon. You could have tribes that very much see Khorne as he is the king of the gods. He's the most powerful. He's the eldest. He's the most, he is the great king. In reality, though, you have to remember that Khorne rages. That's all he does. He's angry at everything all the time. Like, he doesn't make judgments because everything pisses him off. There's nothing that calms him. There's nothing that makes him happier. He just gets more or less angry all the time. And I don't mean like more or less as in like he gets less angry, but there are things that like make him much angrier, and there are things that make him only slightly more angrier. But I agree with Andy that like when you really sit down and look at Khorne, and like you're not, I don't mean this in like a, oh god, he's so lame way, but just trying to understand his character. He's extremely petulant. Yeah. Like he is a table flipper constantly. Like there's so many stories where someone will do something and Khorne basically does the equivalent of getting his face, like you can just see him, his face turning red, and he's like, well, that's not fair, and he like throws the table. That's just what he does. Which, to be fair, if you imagine someone with that temperament being a god, it is very, very scary.
He's the classic example of the angry person who thinks that everyone should play by the rules except for him.
Yeah.
And when they don't do it, he gets angry. When he doesn't get his own way, he gets angry. When he doesn't get what he wants because he's decided on a whim that he wants it today, he gets angry. He is a pretty pathetic individual if you view it from that angle. But then he's a chaos god. He's not meant to be a good guy. He's not someone you're meant to be rooting for. This is pure, not necessarily evil, but it's pure chaos. He's a creature and an entity of whims and angers and rages that very few can deal with and not be murderalized. The Valkyries of the world, for example. And again, only because, one might even argue, because they represent something that feels very Khorne to Khorne, as in I've been defeated and I've risen back and I'm coming back to take what's mine because I'm a big angry child. He's like a man baby.
Yeah. And now you may go, well, I don't really like that interpretation, but that's fine. Like there are other elements you could focus on with him, but like that's why I never really view him as this. Because I just don't think it's really core to his character. And that's not to say that he's not scary. I think when a lot of people hear like he's like a big man baby, that makes him like less terrifying or less powerful. No, it makes him more scary.
Yeah. Particularly because the best way to keep on his side is to just be like him, angry, and he loves that shit. And if you're not like him, well, you're dead. He just kills you. It sucks.
Yeah, it's like, imagine if that child having a temper tantrum at the store because they couldn't get chocolate, when he like throws a tantrum and swings his arm, half the people in the store just explode into blood. Like, Jesus. Like, no, thank you. I don't want to live with that thing.
Yeah, cool.
Darius, Teokte versus the Great Kurgan in a fight, also in terms of the Empire, who had a more grand empire. So the Great Teokte in the book, another thing I want to give C.L. Warner credit for is he does a really good job of, like, he presents to you the myth of the character, but then he'll actually reveal some of the truth behind it. Like, there's two parts that are very funny, in my opinion, where, like, you see in the prologue the fight between him and Skulltaker. It lasts about 30 seconds, maybe a minute. It's very short before they kill each other. But then when the shamans are telling it, they say it lasts for 8 days. Like, it's this great epic battle that lasts for a whole week of a true Warhammer week of 8 days. But you, the reader, know that's not true. And then there's another scene later where they talk about the big battle between Virkus when he was a mortal and leading the Kurgan against the Tong under Teokte, and they have this big fight. And it's like, oh, the war raged for 3 days. And then a character sees the actual flashback of the battle, and it lasts for a couple hours.
Yeah.
I
think it's a really, in fact, it's one of my favorite little bits of that book. That book, it is proper silly. But one of my favorite bits of that book is it shows that Warhammer lore is ultimately all about the stories being told. It's not about what necessarily happens. Did Sigmar and Skulltaker really fight for 3 days? Or was it a relatively short fight? A lucky hit with a hammer? I think that in most cases, it's the second. And C.L. Werner, in this particular book, suggests it's definitely the second. That most of these epic fights, Sigmar fighting Skoranorak, it lasted for 3 weeks. Yeah, bullshit. It probably lasted for a very short period of time because real fights don't last that long. And Sigmar's just a mortal man. But it gets inflated by time and by the retelling. In particular, as the stories turn to myths, they become almost godlike in nature. And that, I think, has been very accurately used as a theme in this book.
Yeah. So that being said, I think the Great Kurgan is probably very similar, where in the Tarmarkhan book, you are given the myth of the Great Kurgan. You're not given the truth. You're given the myth. The book's actually really clear about that. So I don't know who of them would be stronger. Now, the Great Kurgan supposedly had all 4 powers behind him, but Teokte was also proper fucking bonkers.
Yeah, I think Teokte probably would win that one.
Yeah,
he's been described.
Yeah, I would agree with Andy. I think Teokte would probably beat the Great Kurgan in a fight. And that being said, the Great Kurgan, his empire seemed to have lasted longer because his lasts for his life, and then it's at the end of his life that it's taken away from him along with his sons.
No, Teokte's lasted far longer. It lasted for 1,000 years or more.
Well,
everything that comes after
it's pretty ruined by the time of the novel.
It still exists, and they're still undefeated, and they're still there. The descendants of Teokte. It's lasted for. I would suggest if we take the myths, it's lasted the entire length of the Warhammer world, and that's bullshit. I think it's far more likely that it's lasted for about 500 years or so.
You know what? Andy's right, because if the book hadn't shown that his empire explicitly gets sucked into the realm of Khorne, the ruins of it would still be there. Whereas the Great Kurgans, there are no ruins of it. Like, we have no fucking idea where his empire was. So Battlefoot, today I learned that Andy is going to start a greatsword regiment.
I am not starting another greatsword regiment. I already have one. In fact, I found the remnants of one just 2 days ago. 6 models from one of my old regiments of swordsmen. It was an old regiment, actually.
There you go. Michael Hobson, why did Arbal never ascend like Skulltaker did? Go watch our Arbal stream. We talk in depth why Arbal is what he is and why he never seems to get bigger than that. And there's a whole story there. Go watch it because we've already talked about it.
Yeah, we have.
Donovan, what do you think happens when Skulltaker runs out of room on his cloak, or does it grow to accommodate more? I'm just imagining eventually he has like a bridle just floating 20 feet behind him. So it's
that's covered.
Your last sentence is correct. It's probably more metaphysical than that. It is.
Yeah, it's covered. He only keeps the most important skulls to him. Upon him, all the rest of them go to the Skull Throne. In fact, the Brass Citadel as a whole. So yeah, this is already covered inside the lore, and he only carries those which are most important to him. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Tyog ties on there.
Yep. Necromancer Cobalt, does Skulltaker have any extra hatred, rage, desire to kill for Celeste champions, any wizards, or is that not in his nature? So I mean, as a entity of Khorne, there's going to be a natural antipathy there, but that's also something that's that's played up more for the tabletop experience, and like kind of like the broader cosmological experience. I think when you're dealing with someone like Skulltaker on the ground and there happens to be like a Slaanesh champion in front of him instead of anybody else, he might take a little bit of relish in knowing that Khorne might favor that skull, or like, you know, disgracing the champion of a rival. But I don't think it would be that much more, if at all noticeably more, than taking out like a Nurgle champion or a Tzeentch champion.
Yeah, I mean, Skulltaker, when he's immortal, just kills everything. And he doesn't show any favor or any deeper hatred for anything he faces. It's just, if you're in the way, you die. And the Skulltaker that's described inside the army list is broadly the same. He just goes from place to place, killing.
The only thing the army list notes that he seems to get a little bit amped up for is if it's a quote unquote heir of Sigmar. Because there seems he has a bit of
things.
Because there's a whole little like he's mad about that time he lost. Which, to be fair, would be very corny.
Yeah. I mean, he's angry.
Skylar Martin, Cathay themed bloodletters, not just great swords. Not all bloodletters would just wield swords. This falls into the thing of the tabletop where it's easier to print the minis if they all have the same weapon types. Realistically, Khornate demons would probably wield a bizarre, wide, crazy range of weaponry.
Yeah. They've got Hellblades, and how that Hellblade manifests is going to be slightly different in different places. But I don't necessarily think that they're all going to look Cathay just because they happen to be in Cathay. I think that's altogether too real-world specific. They, broadly speaking, carry a big, solid, pointy thing that stabs people.
Yeah. Tom, man, okay, interesting thought. Does the champion of Khorne actually please Khorne? Does it actually make him angry and therefore more powerful? When things go his way, does he get more or less angry? So, okay, this kind of falls into the trap where Andy was talking about earlier of it's easy to think of the dark gods as people, and that it's like, oh, well, Khorne will be happy when this thing happens. There are incidents where someone will do something and Khorne is noted as being pleased, where they grow in power and influence from that act. But Khorne being pleased is not the same as a human being pleased, where like, in order for you to feel pleasure from someone doing something, that act is not going to make you angrier. Those emotions don't work like that. Like if you're angry about something and I do something that pleases you, that means you have become less angry. For Khorne, he is not human. He does not have a brain with a limited set of chemicals that have a limited set of receptors that give him a certain type of predictable state. It's going to be messy, weird, and kind of indescribable, which is the way it should be. He's not a predictable entity, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
For all that he also kind of is.
Yep.
Baron von Boot, I can't help but laugh at the mental image of Khorne tossing Scarbrand like a toddler tossing a toy because it poked him. That is exactly how that went down, in my opinion. Now, granted, from the myth's perspective, it comes off as very, very epic, but when you really think about that, it like left a scratch in Khorne's armor and that he tucked around and like choked him and threw him. Like, it sounds very epic and over the top, but if you think about it like to scale, then yes, it literally is like a toddler got poked by his favorite toy, got mad, and just chucked it out of the playpen.
And as we discussed when we were previously discussing Scarbrand and various other demons, Scarbrand is just Khorne too, because he's a part of Khorne. Yeah. It's a complicated metaphysical state. Scarbrand represents a core component of what being Khorne is.
Which, to be fair, we've all had those days where a part of our body will be like, nope, and it's like, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
So even if that is also maybe making it too relatable. Amadeus, did Total War add interesting new Lord Skulltaker? Yes, which I'm actually going to go over here in just a minute.
Excellent.
So, back to Skulltaker. Thank you for all the support, by the way.
That was a marvelous segue there.
Yeah, so when Skulltaker arrived at Total War, he got a really cool lore update, which is that they decided to make the Cloak of Skulls a mechanic because, like Andy said, like the Cloak of Skulls does have a certain amount of slots, and Skulltaker keeps a certain grouping of skulls with him. Now, one of the things that's known about Skulltaker that is very interesting and very scary is that it is said that Skulltaker, whenever he kills someone and takes their skull, he claims a piece of their essence and he grows more powerful. Like, that's just flat out stated as something he does, which is
every single time,
which is very spooky. Especially because that means he's just constantly getting stronger. Now, granted, that also plays into what we discussed earlier about the timey-wimey fucky stuff, where just because you're fighting Skulltaker in like 25-22 does not mean that's necessarily the most powerful version of Skulltaker, because that might not be the Skulltaker, that might not be the oldest one. There might be one that's technically from his future, who's back in minus 2302, fighting somewhere in, you know, the World's Edge Mountains against dwarves. But what Total War does do is that, what happened?
Nothing's happened.
Okay, sorry, my internet is got weird for a second. Okay,
it's still working fine on this side. I can see you clearly.
Cool. Okay, sorry. Give me half a second. I don't know, talk about something for a second. Actually, no, I can finish my sentence. So, Total War was lovely enough to basically give us a grouping of skulls that are Skulltaker's favorite, essentially. And they gave us, I think it's 8 skulls, and each of them has a little storyline that explains like who it gives like a little lore blurb about who the characters are that these skulls belong to and why they might be notably interesting to Skulltaker. Oh, you know what? I think I know what it is. It's I'm using the Warhammer wiki to read the Skulltaker skulls, but the wiki, like, I don't know what's wrong with it, but it like
don't use the wiki.
no, the Total War wiki, not the regular wiki. But anyway, so I've got the 8 skulls here, and we're just gonna kind of go through them really fast and just pick out what we think are some interesting bits, because some of them will lead into some topics about Skulltaker that are really interesting. So I'm gonna skip the first one because the first one I think is the most interesting. So I'm gonna skip it, and we'll come back to it. So we have Dubois the Prescient, or Dubois the Prescient, depending on how you. It is Dubois because he is Bretonnian. I like this one a lot. So this one says, Skulltaker was destined to come for the Bretonnian Knight's bloodline sooner or later, for it carried greater strength with each passing generation. With his final breath, however, Dubois uttered that his successors would not share his fate. Only time will tell. So this one's pretty interesting because we do get Skulltaker going after a Bretonnian, which is always nice to see him down there. But it talks about him literally tracking down a particular champion, challenging him, killing him. But when Dubois is faced with Skulltaker in his last moments, because actually this is a good segue into a little thing about Skulltaker's fighting style. Skulltaker, fun fact, is a dick. And I'll explain it. That Skulltaker, so when you meet Skulltaker and he challenges you, he basically yells out for so-and-so to come out and fight him. If he shows up outside your castle or whatever. And if you come out, it notes that Skulltaker, at first, you might think that he's honorable because he salutes you. He gives a warrior salute before he begins. And then he goes after you. But then it's kind of revealed that Skulltaker is not like a lot of other Khornate characters. Because most Khornate characters, if they fight you, they're just going to go like almost berserker fury, and they're just going to try and tear you apart. Skulltaker is very explicitly noted for playing with his food.
Yep.
Totally. He likes to torture people. He likes to break your limbs. He doesn't just want to beat you. He wants to break you. And the goal is that he will bring you down to the point where you are crippled, lying on the ground, and you have time for last words. You have time for it to sink in that he's going to take your skull. That's what he prefers. And then he doesn't decapitate most people either. The way you die is way worse than that. He grabs your head with both of his hands and fire comes out and he burns all of the flesh, muscle, and other bits off of your face while you're alive, and then you know all that's left is this pristine skull, and he carves the rune of skull and the rune of corn into the skull, and he takes it. He is a jerk. There is a very sadistic element to him that's actually very unique. Yeah, very fatality. That I find very, very fascinating when you compare him against the likes of Valkia of Scarbrand, who don't do that. That is not how they work. It's actually, that's almost more of a Slaneshi thing, to take such perverse enjoyment in the suffering of your opponent, which is fascinating. A part of me, now I don't think this was the intent, but this is a way you could look into it. I actually could find it a very interesting way of that moral part of him, that Virkos part of him, inflicting on others what was inflicted on him when he died, when he should have died, of the humiliation of that defeat, and how much that informs what he is, that he inflicts that on other people, which is just super cool. Very interesting. Also, fun little prophecy there that Dubois apparently must have had at least some kids and felt very confident that they would defeat Skulltaker, which good on you, great granddad. Way to put that on my shoulder, because I'm sure knowing Skulltaker would be like, I'll be sure to check it out. So the next one, this one I quite like. We have an orc. We have Iron Neck the Wanderer, which says, after his wayward wah dissipated in the far north, which is a very funny way of wording that. Iron Neck trudged alone through the waste nonstop for 2 whole years. His uncanny knack for survival and killing marauder chieftains becoming legend. Skulltaker, however, needed 2 neck blows to take his skull, the orc war boss living up to his name. So this was just kind of fun. I don't think there's a ton of information there, but the idea that there's this orc just antagonizing the Chaos Waste for so long that Skulltaker eventually came for him. And that apparently this guy was so goddamn tough that the Slayer Sword, which is Skulltaker's big old Hellblade, needing 2 chops, that is genuinely impressive. That's a lot of neck meat. However, I don't think there's a lot to decipher there, unless Andy has something.
Nope, I don't at all. That's it. It's an orc. Yeah, sure. That's what we can
orc
say.
Doing orc stuff. All right, next we have Mir the Indomitable. Once an undefeated Tong chieftain, fun. Mir fulfilled a shamanic prophecy and received the power to dream the location of his forthcoming battles. That's an impressive skill. Skulltaker, however, he did not foresee, and Mir fought his fate so furiously that his severed head still spoke even after his death.
Yeah, I like that one. That's a better one. That feels more impactful, because you really want to feel like his favorite ones have got some sort of deeper impact. That orc one, yeah, whatever. It's an orc. He was in the wastes. He's dead. But this one at least has got a nice story.
Yeah, so this one I actually like, because there are some things that you can take away from if you want to. The big thing for me is that you have a character that has a very specific prophetic power. He could see battlefields before the battle is going to happen, but he didn't see Skulltaker coming, which very much seems to imply that Skulltaker doesn't show up in prophecies.
Yeah, I mean, he's Khorne. Khorne stuff often slips free of magic anyways, and I think that would be if you wanted to represent it, a nice 4+ save against prophecy. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, one of the things I also like about that is the fact that Mir still talks also could make an interesting thing of why Skulltaker might value that skull so much if it tells him about battlefields that are coming up. Because Skulltaker would very much like to know that, which is very cool. Next, we have Quintara the Peerless, or Quintara, one of those two. Devoting herself to Nagaroth's wars, Quintara was a lone Druki warrior of unmatched skill who scorned earthly accolades. She met Skulltaker on the isles of the shores of the Blighted Isle. It only took 3 exchanges of word and blade for the demon to overcome her.
Quite like the word part.
Yeah,
gives this one Skulltaker more character.
Yeah, and that is something that I also find interesting about Skulltaker, is that one of the things you find when you read about him, especially, is that he doesn't say a lot, but he usually does say something. And the things that he does say are impactful. One of the things that's actually quite interesting about Skulltaker that I think works well for him is that he kind of is an interesting twist on the aspect of demons talking. Because normally when we're dealing with talking demons, it's usually a Slaneshi or Zinchian demon. And for them, the words usually is like a vomit of language that is usually causing mind fuckery. But for Cornate demons, often when they talk, it's usually something very stupid or blunt. But Skulltaker does very much more seem like a character who the words that he says are just as much part of the process of executing someone as his blade is.
Yeah, agreed. Skulltaker is, unlike many of the demons of Khorne, which are just slavering beasts, they are very much entities of rage without a great deal of depth to their thought. Skulltaker uses language as a part of his challenge, not just to challenge an individual, but to taunt and bring victory. They are a part of his weapon arsenal, his language and his words, and he is happy to use it in any way to get his victory, which I quite like. It gives him a bit more character.
Yeah, that one is quite interesting as well, because there's an interesting story that, of course, will never be explored, but there's an interesting story hiding behind the phrase of that she scorned earthly accolades. Like, she's almost trying to avert pride, which I find super interesting. Next up, this one's a little on the goofy side. It's kind of similar to the orc one, in my opinion. But we have Drongash the Ill-Fated. Drongash called it being well-equipped, but his hateful peers were certain only pure luck could afford a Chaos Dwarf such a long life on patrol in the Darklands' most dangerous and deserted reaches. Drongash was only unlucky once in his existence, and then never again.
It's another one where I'm like, yeah, whatever. That doesn't feel like one that is worthy when you've got all of the Warhammer world at your beck and call, and he has killed members of pretty much all of the important families and groups of the Warhammer world at some point. Having one that's just, hey, he's a Chaos Dwarf who was a bit lucky. Yeah, whatever.
I don't know. It's like, unless Skulltaker is harvesting luck from his skull, which, like, neat. I mean, it's like, whatever. Is luck a force in the Warhammer world? Yes, weirdly enough, but it's difficult to dive into. This one I like. This one's quite fun. Because this one, I think, could make a little bit of good springboard for us to talk very briefly. Well, not super briefly, but talk a little bit about the whole thing of why doesn't Skulltaker kill all the special characters? Well, maybe this is why. Ek, Chosen of the Sword. As a wordless youth who wrought havoc with his two-handed sword, Ek attracted Khorne's gaze at the forefront of many bloody conflicts. Skulltaker challenged the youngling marauder by drawing a claw across his blade, a language Ek understood, and they spoke, in quotations, masterfully until the very end. One of the things that's I find interesting here is that this is a situation where Skulltaker is snuffing out an up-and-coming. This is someone that is going to, like, has Khorne's eye on them and has that vibe of someone that is destined to become something greater, but Skulltaker shows up. And Skulltaker snuffs a potential thread closed, which one of the things that I find interesting about Skulltaker is that a lot of people look at the characters we have and go, well, why is it Skulltaker fighting all these people? And I really think what the question should be is, what of all the characters we might have had if it wasn't for Skulltaker?
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely one way of viewing it. I'd say it's a bit deeper than that as well, because there's one of the core tenets of Khorne here, which is Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows. Killing the successful at war is not in Khorne's interest or care. Defeating them, it might be in the individual's interest. So Skulltaker might, upon hearing a particular individual has done whatever, go, yeah, that's someone I'm going to try and track down. And they might just avoid them. Because if you are of anyone of note and you are aware of the chaos naughtiness that lies out there, Skulltaker is a known element. And if you say someone like Malekith, you just go, yeah, no. I'm never taking to the field against you. Why would I? There is no benefit here for me. I'm not an idiot who is only concerned about facing things on the battlefield. You can sit there and shout and scream about how I should fight you all you want. It's not happening today. I think it is deep and it's complex because Khorne is not just simply the god of I will take out all the big things and challenge them. He is the god of the blood flowing, and he doesn't care from where. So it's actually not, in one aspect, in his interest at all for Skulltaker to take out the most effective. It's his interest to take out those who have stopped. So the warrior who sits behind the castle walls, now Skulltaker comes. You're not. You're a great warrior who is squandering what you should be doing. Time to kill you. So there's lots of different routes that we can take here. And the more I talk about it, the more different ways that we could negotiate it. Loosely speaking, Skulltaker is an individual, and that individual will pursue individuals sometimes like this, sometimes in other ways.
Actually, I think that works quite nicely with the Iron Neck the Wanderer story, the orc, of that, like, his war was over, and he was just this wandering, like, his purpose was gone. Like, like Skulltaker going to collect him because he was no longer shedding enough blood to earn Khorne's favor in a sense anymore.
Yeah, quite. Or for Khorne to, go, yeah, good job, my son. He's not really that sort of individual though, because Khorne is an angry thing. There's just bloodshed happening all over the place, and when it stops, Skulltaker tends to pop along and start the blood flowing again.
Yeah.
And doing so by taking out those who've stopped.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect point to jump back to the first skull, because exciting. There is a small little note in Skulltaker stuff about that there was a time that he almost fought. He wanted to go after Cetra, but he couldn't get to Cetra. So then he tried to go after Nakaf, the Cetra's herald. But he didn't get Nakaf either, and there's a reason for that. Because Cetra's not a fucking idiot. And that's why this guy happens. Which we get Kakalek, the greatest tomb warrior. And it says, for centuries, Kakalek defeated the countless champions that ventured into his corner of Nehekara, proclaiming himself the greatest duelist of all the Desert Kings. When Skulltaker finally came to Nehekara and called for the strongest of all the Nehekarans, only the foolhardy Kakalek answered. To this day, Kakalek, to this day, his skull upon Skulltaker's cloak still whispers the word strongest. Of that. So when Skulltaker came to do what a lot of people would expect his story to be about, to go after the strongest, which would be Cetra. It is. What do Cetra and his court do? Ignore him.
Yeah.
They just ignore him. Yeah. He can rage all he wants outside the tomb necropolis. One of the things that's very explicit in Skulltaker's story is that he shows up outside of a castle, yells at people to come fight him, and he stays there, and then he just leaves. Like, it very much says, when boredom sets in, he leaves.
Yeah.
Like,
he's impatient. He is, like Khorne himself, somewhat of a whiny kid. He doesn't get his own way. He strops off in his own direction. And I know this is a slightly overused metaphor here, where we're saying Khornes are like angry kids, but he kind of are. They don't have a great depth of thought. They don't have much patience. They think they're right in all things. And they often are when it comes to fighting. But when it comes to anything else, they're very rarely are, meaning that anyone like, say, Cetra or Malekith can very easily avoid them.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of like, sure, he might be mighty enough to kill some of these big characters, but when he shows up outside their house, like, if you were driving in your car and there was a guy on the side of the road who had a sign saying, pull over and fight me, bitch, are you going to pull over? You're just going to go, what a fucking weirdo, and just drive past him.
But there's some idiots who would stop.
Yeah, there are dipshits that would do it.
Yeah. And it's those idiots who end up in his big bag of skulls.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big thing, is that there's these different angles of, like, on one hand, Khorne doesn't want all the greatest warriors to die because that means they're going to stop making the blood flow. There's the other hand of Skulltaker does seem to manifest pretty distant to his targets and have to, like, journey there, and it's possible for him to get distracted or not make it for various reasons. And then when he does show up, like, it always makes me laugh so many people miss that, of like his literal army list, like in the tabletop book on his entry in the 7th and 8th edition book, literally just the line of he just sits out there yelling at people, fighting at anyone that comes out.
Come on, fight me! Come on, get out of here! Ah!
Yeah, and then he just leaves, which is so great. They kind of reference this in a really funny way, I think unintentionally, in the Total War Warhammer, his little intro movie when you're on the character select screen. Because his intro movie is he tackles this Empire Captain Knight guy and kills him and, like, chops his head off. But then he, like, looks up and there's this big wall with an Empire general standing on the wall looking down at Skulltaker, and Skulltaker's like, ah! And the guy's just like, well, I guess we're just staying inside then.
Nope.
Like, yeah, just don't go find him. Just ignore him.
Yeah, it's the way to deal with them.
Granted, that makes Skulltaker much scarier on the battlefield, because if you're out on the battlefield, getting away from him is much, much harder.
Yeah.
Because on Kul Tiran, he does haul ass. Like, he moves pretty quick. So, like, he's not above, like, trying to get to people and, like, hunting them for periods of time, trying to get them to come out, being annoying. Even in the story, actually, this is even with the Teogtai story, Teogtai doesn't go after him at first. Like, he just kind of ignores him and stays away from him. But because of the nature of the Tong, so many people keep going to fight him, and he just is kind of like cleaving his way through, like, farmsteads, and he's just killing lots of people, that Teogtai finally gets fed up enough that he's like, all right, if I'm going to be the king of these people, I can't show signs of weakness. I have to answer this challenge. So he eventually agrees to fight him. But he didn't for a long time. Like, he just ignored him. And let Skulltaker kill tons of people. And that's kind of an interesting thing of, like, why Skulltaker, funny enough, is in many ways less successful against less martial cultures. Where, like, like Malekith, or like a lot of Dark Elves, it's like, if Skulltaker shows up, it's like, I challenge you. They're like, all right, cute. Somebody shoot him with a crossbow. We're staying in here. Whereas, like, if he goes after orcs, if he goes up and he's like, well, come fight me, the biggest war boss, that war boss is going to answer.
Yeah, definitely.
That war boss is going to shove people aside and be like, oh, I'm going to show him dead hard. Like, he has different success levels in different cultures because of how they handle the nature of a challenge, which is really, really interesting. And just adds more flavor to why he might be more successful against certain races and less successful against others. So what about Grimgor? If he came after Grimgor, I bet Grimgor would fight him in a heartbeat. Yeah. And I honestly have no idea who would win that. But that kind of also ties into Grimgor also produces oceans of blood. It would not be in Khorne's interest for Grimgor to die. It would.
Yeah, I mean, Grimgor, it's very much the sort of place where you could imagine him being summoned to, because there's so much blood, but equally, the Khorne has got more interesting things for someone like good old Skulltaker to pursue.
Yeah. All right. We got 3 more skulls here. We've got Hans, the Elector's finest. As a decorated Empire captain, Hans had a military career punctuated by death. Spurning promotion to maximize his time on the front line, thousands died alongside him, but so too did his enemies. Numberless mortal wounds should have killed him long before Skulltaker's challenge. This one's kind of interesting to me because it almost implies that he had somehow been managing to avoid death somehow. Like, it almost implies that there's something more than mundane going on.
Yeah, he sounds like he's a latent wizard.
Yeah, like he was almost cheating in a sense. And Skulltaker was there to put an end to him.
Again, doesn't sound like a favored skull, does it? Out of all the things you could have in the Warhammer world, is that the one you're going to keep? Not the, the Lizardman skull that had been fighting against you for the last 2,000 years, and you finally took that sod down.
To be fair, the Hans skull buffs are by far the shittiest. Like, they're not that cool. They're the worst ones. This one's quite fun. Pirate Lord Penko. It seemed that wherever Lord Penko sailed, despair, warfare, and ruin followed, feeding the vampire admiral's own arcane strength and power. Such an aura and rapidly spreading reputation for belligerence may have attracted Khorne's attention eventually, but it caught Skulltakers first, which is an interesting sentence. Of Skulltaker being attracted to a very loud, obnoxious threat before the Blood God's own attention is drawn, which I like that sentence because it's difficult to parse what exactly Khorne's intention implies. Like, is it that Khorne would have sent somebody else? Is it that Khorne would have been impressed? Is it that Khorne would have hated him and sent like Valkia or sent some other champion to go snuff out this guy? There's something there, but it's left up to interpretation, which is fun. And then the last one, this character is fun. This is a character I could absolutely see Skulltaker going to because of his personality. Johann the Demon Hunter.
Oh.
To the Order of the Silver Flame, the witch hunter Johann was a zealous weapon gravely feared by the Empire's hidden cultists.
Excuse me, did it say the Order of the Silver Flame?
Sorry, Silver Hammer. I misread.
Okay, good.
My brain was skipping ahead. To the Order of the Silver Hammer, sorry. Though Silver Flame would also be crazy cool. That would have just been a deeper cut. The witch hunter was a zealous weapon gravely feared by the Emperor's hidden cults. So here's the thing that makes me laugh and explains exactly why Skulltaker would go after this guy. As Johann rooted out demons, he would openly challenge them to defy their inevitable death at his hands. Skulltaker answered. That is a good character for Skulltaker to go after. A guy that goes after demons and mocks them openly, first of all, what a badass. Second of all, what a fucking idiot. In the same breath. Don't mock demons, guys. It never goes well. It's not worth it.
Life's too short.
Yeah, someone probably would need to tell Elric the wizard that, because I can see Elric doing that exact fucking thing, making some smarmy ass comment to a demon, the demon being like, "All right, bet, I'll see you later." All right, and that are the 8 skulls from Total War.
So I have I feel they are somewhat lackluster.
They're typical.
They don't
campaign.
shine. Yeah, they don't shine with the Warhammer brilliance you would expect for Skulltaker, who has taken some of the coolest skulls that the world has to offer. It feels a little like, here's some random dudes that have been killed. They're dead now.
Well, to be fair, they were probably written by not a lore person at CA's dev studio.
Fair enough. Well, if that's the case,
some flavor text here.
That'll do. It's not the best flavor text in the world, I think. You could have gone for, a really old Lizardman skull. That would have been fun. I'd probably put one of the Council of 13 on there.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Get somebody who's pretty freaking impressive. Something that makes you go, oh, holy crap.
Let's get caught up on Super Chat stuff. Sam Passmore, love you guys. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Question. I think I read somewhere in Wolfrup, that vampire counts and the Chaos Dwarfs are in talks. What would, in your views, be a deal or agreement look like? So this is a building story thread in 4th edition Wolfrup that I actually really like that they're doing. It's been mentioned in a couple different books that, I think if you read the Dwarf Player's Guide, there's a note about Thorgrim, because once again, that book, there are a lot of parts I like. I don't understand why it's written like a GM's hand guide instead of a player's guide. Yeah. It just is, but it's weird. But anyway, there's a part in it that the players don't need to know, but for a GM is great, where it talks about that Thorgrim Grudgebearer, the High King, has been receiving missives that Rangers have intercepted messages between Sylvania, representatives in Sylvania, and Zarnagrund. And they're getting really worried because something's building there. That there is a relationship of some kind happening. To me, this makes a lot of sense and is a relationship that should have existed far before this, but didn't, because the Chaos Dwarfs kind of just didn't exist.
So who's worried?
High King Thorgrim.
Thorgrim, gotcha.
So Kadas Kadak has intercepted messages that have been crossing the World's Edge Mountains to get to the Darklands and back. Now, we don't know what this agreement is going to be about, but I will say, like when you're dealing with someone, especially like Manfred, when you're dealing with someone like Manfred von Karstein and the Chaos Dwarves, those are two factions you do not fucking want talking to each other, but would absolutely be talking to each other, in my opinion.
Would they? I mean,
I think so.
They're chaos. Vampires are so arrogant.
I think Manfred wants to understand anything and everything he can.
Yeah, like, but he's only been awake for a couple of years.
Well, according to some timelines, but according to the 8th edition timeline, he's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah, but he's wandered, so he'd know all about the Chaos Dwarves already. So there's not
really that makes sense. It might not be Manfred. It could just be who knows.
Yeah, fine. There's an interesting something there.
I think there are vampires who would be interested in certain abilities the Chaos Dwarves have, and the Chaos Dwarves want everything. They're greedy as fuck.
I can see the Chaos Dwarves being interested, but the vampires are I'd argue in more danger there than the Chaos Dwarves, because anything that the Chaos Dwarves produce is ultimately tainted. It carries the curse of chaos upon it. It carries the ability to mutate, change, and twist things into something that they weren't before, very possibly losing the corpus of the vampire at hand. And any of the brighter vampires will know this. If they know anything of the Chaos Dwarves. The Chaos Dwarves are not exactly the most commonly discussed subject in the world. I think there's something in that. I'd be very interested to see where it would land, though. It would be almost certainly some idiot vampires who really didn't know what they were doing, and that could very well end up with a very interesting storyline.
The only other thing I could see that I think if you were dealing with a Manfred situation, I could see Manfred trying to spur the Chaos Dwarves into action to try and weaken them. Or to try and weaken mutual enemies.
Yeah, I can see that, but to what end over in the Empire? I don't think there is an end in the Empire there, because the Chaos Dwarves are so insular in terms of how they spread, and Manfred will know that.
Well, I mean, if Manfred's trying to expand his influence, getting the dwarves occupied with something out east would be favorable, because they were a huge problem for him and Conrad.
I mean,
I'm not saying I don't know what they're going to do with it. I'm just throwing out ideas, but
was it just an adventure hook?
It is, but it's repeated in another book. I don't remember what the second book is off the top of my head, but it's in 2 different books now. That being said, they've announced the new dwarf book coming out, which I'm excited and very nervous to read. Lords of Stone and Steel, as opposed to Masters of Stone and Steel. Great job. So we'll see what's in that. The cover looks very nice, though. The cover is gorgeous. Dynaman. Okay, Skulltaker torturing people like that and bullying them before you die could imply that cruelty and vindictiveness is an aspect of Khorne. Oh, yeah. The way I see it, it kind of represents the violent anger found in bullies and abusers who inflict violence upon people for no logical reason apart from the anger built up inside them. Yep.
I would pull away that from the no logical reason. Bullies and abusers often have very real reasons for becoming the people that they are. It's very rare that it's just simply genetically speaking they are going to do these things, as in there is even in that case a logical reason. It's in their genetics. So I would suggest that the no logical part is the only thing I'd push against there, that push back against on, because I would look for there to be more story.
I would rephrase it as Skulltaker, especially if you decide to run with what Werner wrote, and like take that Virko story as just like pure canon. The idea that Skulltaker suffered a deep trauma and inflicts that trauma on other people, that is a very, very realistic way that can manifest.
Yeah, and I think that works really well. The pushing of that trauma that sits inside his heart that he almost certainly denies, and inflicting upon others, giving him what would be arguably some sort of
control over
control. Let's call it that.
Control. Michael, is Queek's trophy rack akin to Skulltaker's cloak? Only in the sense that they are skulls taken from people and kept, but they perform very, very different functions.
Yeah, quite. I mean, they're trophies that are collected. So yeah, there's similarities there. Of course there are. And they won't be the only characters in the Warhammer world who take trophies, because trophy taking is a common practice.
Yeah, plus there's literally a thing where GW just puts skulls over everything all the time, everywhere. They're all over the place. Darius Rose, would that mean that the Tong Marauder is on par with Chaos Warrior, since everyone is scared of them, essentially looking more like Skull Reapers. It depends. Generally speaking, that's an argument you could make. I don't know how well it's going to hold up.
Made before. Yeah.
But I will say there are depictions of the Tong where it would appear that this would be the case. Yeah. But it's not a universal truth. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Mr. Grumbler, what about a coordinate magic user / psyker? Someone who uses it not for battle advantage, but to achieve a dual spread rate. So, generally speaking, Khorne is said to hate magic. But Khorne does have priests in like pretty much all the settings now. I don't know how universal that is across the older lore, but in the Khorne needs people to summon demons.
Various blood fathers, blood priests, blood things have been around for ages. And they exist. Are they doing magic? No, they're doing blood shit. It's a very different thing. So broadly, the answer to this one is, what about a coordinate magic user psyker? No, that's what about it. But the Warhammer World War 40k, as you suggested with psyker, is enormous. There's always going to be something weird out there. But the general word is here, absolutely not, under any circumstances, even if it can be used as an advantage. The very fact that you think it can be used as an advantage means you've lost that argument, because it shouldn't be. It is just right out. Khorne says no.
Yeah, when you're dealing with things like blood priests, blood fathers, yada yada yada, that is when you look into it, it's obviously you could call it magic because it's resulting in weird things happening. So it is a form of magic, but it's a very specific blood magic, and it always comes from them often sacrificing a lot of their own blood or sacrificing the blood of people around them, and it's essentially drawing Khorne's attention to intervene in some way by causing demons to manifest, or causing enough bloodshed that the demons are attracted, or thinning the veil of reality a little bit, or tamping down on magic. So they exist, but they function very uniquely.
Yeah, that they use the innate power that blood has to do stuff, and they are not using magic.
Yeah, they are not using the winds of magic. That is, you could say that 100%. Winds of magic have nothing to do with it. Darius Rose. Okay, how tall are elves usually? Also, damn right, I'm cute. Cool. You certainly are.
Okay, so elves tend to sit around about the 6.5 foot height area. Sometimes they're depicted as just slightly taller than humans, at around about 6'2", 6'3". Often they're over 7 foot tall, particularly when they are heroic. So your average Tyrion is probably sitting around about 7.5 foot tall. He's just bigger than everybody else. And the big mistake is to think that he's some sort of light, winsome little figure. He's heavier than most dwarves. He's so big, he's so tall, and he's made of muscle. Talls are usually around about the 6.5 foot tall. It's also worth noting that they have much less differences between the genders. So that's the same for men and women. It's also the same for... It's also worth noting that chaos doesn't affect them as deeply as it does humanity. So you tend to find that the extremes that lie outside of the norm are much less common amongst the elves. So it's very rare you get a short elf or an exceedingly tall elf. Generally, it's only those who are otherwise blessed or cursed, depending how you wish to pursue it, who will be particularly large or small in one way. Tyrion, notably shorter than most elves. Tyrion, notably taller. Teclis, notably shorter.
Yes, so could Tyrion or Marathi or Hellebron pin you to the wall? Probably.
Yes, almost certainly. Definitely.
Grimgor would kick him in the balls. It's canon. No.
It is not.
Grimgor doesn't go for the balls. He goes for the headbutt. His signature move is the fucking headbutt.
Correct.
Phil, so I've noticed Skulltaker seems to be extremely prideful in Total War's rendition of the character. He's absolutely preening in some of those lines of his. Could the unthinkable happen? Could the Dark Prince hold some sway over a servant of the Blood God? Is that possible? Khorne himself is arrogant and prideful and vain. One of the things that, this is another trap a lot of people fall into, is they think that the domains of the gods are exclusive. So if it's pride, vainglory, lust, desire, it's Slaanesh, period. That's not how it works. The gods have lots and lots and lots of overlappings.
And they're constantly fighting over the individual domains in the realm of chaos. That's not just simply because they fight and hate each other. It's because they equally claim large parts of the realm of chaos, and they're pushing and pulling across it with their demons and the constant war that goes on in the realm of chaos. Yeah, it's a complicated thing, like all things chaos.
Now, do I think that Total War's rendition of Skulltaker being very preening and prideful is accurate? I do, personally. I think from the way that he treats the people that he fights, he absolutely would be. I think pride. I don't think I would think of it necessarily as a sin in the sense, or like in a Slaneshi sense, where it's like it's so excessive. But I do think that's how he would, if you could get him to talk to you, how he would come off.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see the lines myself. I'm going to have to go on and have a quick go of it because I've not tried it yet. Because what can often be seen as pride by the individual who's saying it will be seen as nothing more than fact. It's not excessive. It simply is the way that things are. I'll be interested to see what they are.
Yeah, I don't think Skulltaker comes off as obsessive or like excessive in his pride, in my opinion. I feel like he's very matter of fact in a sense. Of his capabilities, but man, it sounds arrogant as fuck.
Yeah.
Singemeister, so Krokar's got to fight him, right? Maybe, possibly, not that we've ever heard of.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I mean, Skulltaker, you have to remember that even with the amount of time Skulltaker has to kick around, it's a big world. There's a lot of places to be. And even with the timey-wimey bullshit of the realms of chaos, he can only be in so many places in reality at once. So the odds that he will have fought everybody is pretty small.
It is diminishingly small, yeah.
Godzilla 2021 would love to see Skulltaker interact with Chalkox once, especially with the BS that Chalkox items have together. Also to see if Chalkox would talk back to him or completely. That would have been fun. I would have loved, for the end times, that would have been a good showdown for Skulltaker. Yeah. Skulltaker doesn't actually show up in the end times, which is
because they forget.
Bonkers. I guess he was busy.
Of course he was.
Yeah, so he doesn't make an appearance, which is a shame because like him fighting Chalkox would have been peak of the ultimate executioner versus the ultimate bodyguard. That being said, I can answer the second part of would Chalkox talk back? No. Chalkox is more like a living statue. He's of all of the Lizardman characters, he is the most automaton-like. Where he only moves as much as is necessary. And other than that, he is stone still. He has a very explicit purpose. So I think you might have Skulltaker talk at him, but I don't think if they wrote him correctly, Chalkox would never respond, ever. Dino-Man, is there anything special about Uzul's Koltirin, or are they just a very big, strong juggernaut? It's just that. He has a name.
I'm pointing down to your comment because you nailed it.
Yeah, Total War made him gold or brass. He's mostly brass colored. Cool. So that's about it.
He's a big, strong juggernaut. There you go. You've already nailed it. I'm sorry to say.
To be fair, the vast majority of mounts in Warhammer Fantasy that have names are it's a bigger one a little bit. Some of them have like really cool storylines, like Malhendir or Deathclaw, where they have like actual little narratives behind them. But a lot of them are just blink and you'll miss it. Like, oh, they have a name and they're a little bit. They have +1 attack. Cool. Andres, what?
Wow.
What wins are necessary to cast the following spells? Perpetual muscle cramp, manual breathing, elastic. Well, I can argue shadow could be that as well. Like making someone think about manually breathing. Elastic/itching bones.
Kinda Jade.
Repel maidens.
Oh, but you could do that with most wins.
Tungsten balls.
Metal. So Shaman at the end there. So perpetual muscle cramp. So cramping up, that's your muscles twitching. Okay, going into spasm. You could do that with actuary as well, but it's primarily a jade. You could do it with most of the wins. I mean, you could fake somebody into believing it was occurring with, say, Ulgu. In fact, you'll find that most wins can do most stuff It's just not necessarily what you believe. There's a big difference between, say, having tungsten balls and believing you have tungsten balls, for example. But broadly speaking, whenever it's dealing with your body doing stuff, it's normally jade. If it's turning into something else, whatever it's turning into, it's normally that wind. So in tungsten balls case, metal.
Yeah, that one threw me off. I was expecting you to bring up the usual meme of testicular torsion, which would be jade.
Very different, jade.
Yeah, Darius Rose. What I've realized about this stream, in which Corin is yelling at his followers like Scarbrand, is he's just arguing with himself. Very relatable.
And basically, yes,
yeah,
it's accurate. The greater demons are nothing more than manifestations of that god. The lesser demons are much the same. They're all the souls claimed by it, which is why we get the general, as was discussed before, stories of the lesser demons are nothing more than those who once worshipped or who were killed by or who absorbed by whatever one of the chaos gods, because that's effectively what they are. All the soul stuff that's been pulled in by that god then gets regurgitated back into the material realm as the demonic influence of that entity. Is nothing more than that entity. All of those plague bearers are nothing more than Nurgle. There are just little bits of Nurgle in the same way that we as human beings are created from loads of different creatures. We are not just simply a human being. Our stomach is filled with all different types of bacteria, as our bodies. In fact, our brains have got little creatures running around them that keep everything clean. We are weird biological monument to different species. We are not just one thing. The chaos gods are the same.
Yeah, actually, that's such a good way to put it. I mean, think about how, like, if you were to spit on someone's like, you just spat a piece of yourself at me, but it's actually like these little creatures that have their own motivations and mechanisms and stuff that can make you terribly ill if they get into the wrong place. So that leaves us with a little less than 30 minutes. Thank you for all the super chat stuff to get into the last part, which is very important.
The important part.
You may, when we've talked about Skulltaker a lot of this time, hear his name and go, Uzul. And then we're like, yeah, Uzul, the Slayer of Kings. And you go, wait. I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah.
Because you have. And that's because the Slayer of Kings actually predates Skulltaker.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that the Slayer of Kings is also the name of, well, does his sword have a name in that book?
Yeah, okay, so we have a couple of dating issues.
Yeah.
So, as in predating, because it's very possible that Verkus is thousands upon thousands of years old, right? At the very beginning, possibly even during the time of Be'lakor.
Oh, sorry, I meant real life dating, not in universe dating.
Real life dating, yes, definitely before.
Yeah, Slayer Sword came, or the Slayer Kings came first.
Yeah, that's 5th edition. Yeah, Slayer of Kings, and he was named Slayer of Kings. It's one of Skulltaker's names, Slayer of Kings. So it does lead you to the immediate question of, wait a minute, is the Slayer of Kings, is the sword that the Everchosen is? Okay, wait a minute. So Vangel, the second Everchosen, made the Slayer of Kings, or otherwise bound a greater demon into the Slayer of Kings to create this enormous Everchosen weapon of much killiness. Did they use Azul Skulltaker? That's the big question. And the answer is in the text, because it's a demonic name. Demonic names aren't shared. If you have the demon name, it just is. It just is what you are. So the answer is there. Yes. Archaon wields Skulltaker. Which is cool.
Yeah, so in the past, a lot of people, myself included, would see that and get caught up in the classification system. Where you go, oh, well, the Slayer of Kings that is wielded by Archaon says it's a bloodthirster, a greater demon inside the blade. So it can't be Skulltaker because he's a lesser demon. But as we've talked about at the beginning of the stream, throw that out the door.
Yeah. I'm going to go further. And I'm going to say, stop thinking in such three-dimensional ways. We have time. Let's use that as a fourth dimension. Just because Skulltaker isn't a greater demon just now does not mean that he won't become one if you are desperate for it to be a greater demon, specifically a greater demon held within that weapon. Because Scarbrand always exists. Scarbrand? Where'd that come from?
I don't know.
Skulltaker always exists. Skulltaker as a demon exists before the mortal that became Skulltaker existed. We know this. In the same fashion, Skulltaker, the potential greater demon, if you wish him to be so, also exists long before and after that sword comes into existence. Loosely speaking, time and demons do not work in the same way as mortals and demons. The demon that is Skulltaker can come out of the aether, come out of the warp, can come out of the realm of chaos at any point in time, because he doesn't live a linear timed existence like we do in the mortal realms. It's completely different in the realm of chaos. So Skulltaker is manifested as an exalted lesser demon of chaos, for example, and then moves into an entirely new existence as a demon prince, a greater demon, a less. It doesn't matter what the name is, and eventually comes to an end, which is Vangel, the second ever chosen, who defeats him, takes him down, and binds him into that sword. A sword that will be used by ever-chosens afterwards until eventually Archaon uses it to destroy the world. So the story of Skulltaker doesn't end with the story of this character that you can use during the end times, that you can use on your Warhammer battlefields. The story of Skulltaker continues on in an entirely different form, as at some point the demon comes out from the aether and is destroyed by Vangel. Perhaps Vangel goes up to the realm of chaos itself and takes out Skulltaker there. By this point, Skulltaker, having swollen in power to such an extent, having killed everything that it could face across multiple realities, may be the equivalent of a greater demon of Khorne, may have the size of one at least. An enormous demon that Vangel, the second ever chosen, defeats. We can be pretty much certain that Azul is Azul, because that's how demonic names work. There is only one demonic name per demon, and they are all individually different, which sounds impossible because it kind of is. The whole nature of the Aether is that it kind of doesn't make sense. But true names are true names, and true names are not shared. That also means that the likelihood that the Fires of Azul set of spells from the Bright College, indeed, there we go. Fireball of Azul from Mordheim. There's lots of Azul fire spells. It suggests that this demon at some point is going to become associated with fire. And indeed, he does burn off the flesh as he takes the skulls. Fire is already associated there, and Khorne and fire have always gone hand in hand. But what you have to remember is Azul, as a term, is still something in Dark Tongue, which is meaning, in turn, that it means something in the lingua prestantia or Anaquian. What are all those things? They are languages of magic, which means if you say Azul, fire happens if you're a wizard. So the Fires of Azul is nothing more than Azul means fire in the Aether, which means that this is a demon of fire and anger and eventually bringing down the world inside the sword of an ever-chosen. Which is cool.
It is. It is super cool. And this does mean that you can 100% canonically make a meme of Skulltaker punching Archaon and yelling, "Quit hitting yourself," or the reverse. And it's completely canonical. But one of the things that's super interesting with this is that for just to add some fuel to the fire.
I have to bring up this comment because no,
that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
No, specifically no, because he can also be in the end times because demons are not bound by time. Okay, so if this was the case, that's why he didn't appear. He wouldn't have existed from Vangel's point onwards in the real world, and he certainly wouldn't have existed before the arrival of Verkus, because he couldn't, because Verkus hadn't yet ascended. So definitely not that, for all it is actually quite funny to bring it up.
Yeah, but some other little elements to add fuel in the fire that are of interest is that if you're sitting there going, well, I don't understand, I thought demons are static. No, demons can transition into different kinds of demons. The most famous case, of course, being Kugoth Plaguefather. Kugoth was a Nurgling once.
Yep.
And then he fell in Nurgle's cauldron, and he absorbed a bunch of goodies, and he became a big old fat greater demon. There are ways to transition between the various forms. There are demons that have been punished by the dark gods after great failures and have been lessened into weaker forms. So Uzul changing from his bloodletter form, so to speak, into a greater demon form at some point in his history, and then his great apotheosis or his great rise is defeated by a second Everchosen, which is a very cool feat for an Everchosen, and bound into a sword. Great, awesome, no problem with that.
As we've discussed, Skulltaker is proper bonkers. So the idea of taking down Skulltaker being one of the great trials for the all four gods to say, yep, this one will do. Yeah, this one will do. And you're saying that he took down Skulltaker and bound him in a sword? Okay, fair enough. I don't like you, Khorne, but I do like that he beat your demon. So here I am as Tzeentch/Nurgle going, I will accept this as our next potential chosen pawn for destroying the world.
So Todd Meister, so this is something that gets brought up occasionally, is that if you know a demon's true name, it's something they hide and it gives you power over them, which is true. Demons do hide their true names. That being said, just because we, the audience, know that Skulltaker's name is Uzul does not mean that everybody in the setting knows his name is Uzul. Because no one ever that I've ever read refers to him as Uzul. They always call him the Skulltaker. That's his moniker. Uzul is a secret. That is something that does not seem to get around much. Archaon, if memory serves, I believe Archaon eventually learns Uzul's true name for the Slayer of Kings, because that's how he releases the demon, which allows Skulltaker's power to literally flow to his veins, and he gains the strength and power of the demon and the sword, which makes him fucking insane. Full power Archaon is bullshit. He's very
all of the full power characters were bullshit.
Yeah. So I don't think this is one of those cases where that's necessarily the case. And even then, just because you know a demon's true name, it is not as simple as simply saying it and, oh, great, you have power over them. It is a very difficult process. And some demons are so powerful that I think even if you knew their true name, unless you're like one of the top characters, they're like, take Nakari, for instance. There are a lot of characters that know Nakari's name because Nakari is an arrogant shit. The only character that ever manages to get him with it is Malekith. And Malekith only gets it once, and then Nakari doesn't fall for it again. Mm-hmm. So there are systems that you have to follow along. It is not as simple. Like, there are some demons that I think would very much hide their true names. There are others, like Nakari, for instance, who I think necessarily wouldn't, because they're so supreme in their might. And it's a well-earned arrogance.
Yeah, I mean, just because you know a thing doesn't mean you can do a thing. For example, I know that I can run 100 meters, but I'm not going to win the Olympics. And all it's going to take is, there's going to be someone out there who can win the Olympics and run faster than anybody else. But you got to be trained, skilled. You got to know all the stuff. You've got to have effectively put yourself in a position where you can, now moving back to the Warhammer side of things, pit your will against this demon and win. Just because you know a thing doesn't mean that you can do a thing.
Yeah, and the best way to say that is true names in fantasy, don't think of them as like kind of the I don't know if this is
that unlocks. It's not the key that unlocks. It's a part of a component to bind, and if you don't have it, you're almost certain to fail. If you do have it, you might succeed.
Yeah, it's not like kind of like, I don't know if this was the case in the original myths, but like in a lot of modern retellings of them, like the whole thing with the Fae, where like if you reveal your given name, you're fucked. Like it's over instantly if you reveal your name. Totally. It doesn't work like that in Warhammer.
Yeah, pop up a couple here. Aradel asks, aren't demonic names hecking long in lore? Not all of them, no. Sheer Getru, for example, that is Sheer Getru's actual name from the enemy within. Sherutar Gitaru is the actual name for the exalted champion of Tzeentch. That's the true name of that particular entity. Some names are super short. Some are enormously long. It isn't standard. So it's much like a website. You could say that, to get a web address, they've got to be relatively long these days because all the other names have been chosen. Yeah, you're right, because a whole bunch of other ones have already been taken. So they don't need to be hecking long.
Yeah, I think this tends to come from a little misunderstanding where, like, there have been some authors that have been more of the idea that if you know the name, it's just instantly over for the demon. So they like to make the names really fucking long and impronounceable. And there's also some notes in, like, the Tome of Corruption where they're like, well, if you're doing a Tzeentch demon, make it a 9-part name because Tzeentch likes the number 9. If it's a Khorne demon, make it an 8-part name because Khorne likes the number 8. But that's not, like, the locked in, this is how it always works. It was just a recommendation from those authors. And
to finish off this entire argument here, Todd Meister asked, how did Malekith do it? Because Malekith's a freaking amazing sorcerer. That's how. Because Malekith has absolute contempt for demons and will do whatever it takes to win a battle, including binding them to his will.
Go read the Tyrion and Tekla series and you can find out the hilarious amounts of redundancy that he put into the ritual to summon Dakari, because it had a lot of redundancy.
You got to be careful, but Malekith is very good at what he does.
Yeah. All right, getting caught up. Where did I leave off here? So the pride is probably accurate, but what about the skull looking animation? So this is actually a fun little thing that I actually want to briefly bring up. There is a funny thing with the artists that have created Demons of Warhammer Fantasy, which is that whoever the artists were that were responsible for them, for some reason looked at the demons and said, you know what all demons should have? Fucking long-ass tongues. All of them. Demonettes, long-ass tongues. Bloodfletters, long-ass tongues. Horrors of Tzeentch, long-ass tongues. I don't know why it's a thing, but it's a thing. Someone had a tongue fetish and put it into all their artwork. I don't know. It's just there. But so Skulltaker licking his skulls, that's because the animators saw Skulltaker's design and went, wow, that's a long tongue. He probably does something with it. And you know what? Fair. It's there. I don't know why the demons of Warhammer Fantasy have such long tongues, but it's a thing. Like, literally, go look through the art. It is everywhere. I don't know why.
I blame Mark Gibbons.
Yeah.
And John Blanche. John Blanche, too.
So we'll have to bring that up with Mark next time we talk to him. Necromancer Koval. Does that mean when Archaon releases Uzul to beat Skulltaker actually did fight him? No, because that's not how the Slayer of Kings works. It's not a Pokeball. He doesn't like throw it and Skulltaker pops out and starts fighting. It pours the demon's power into Archaon. So Archaon adds the reflexes, strength, speed, and skill of the demon, in this case Skulltaker, to himself. And it makes him just bonkers. So that being said, if you wanted to play around with some stuff, when the Slayer of Kings shatters, when he's fighting Sigmar, that could have interesting ramifications, because that would have allowed that version of Uzul to escape. Now, granted, they immediately don't worry about it, and by the time Age of Sigmar kicks around, the Slayer of Kings is back to having Uzul inside of it. So, I don't know. I guess he went and saw a repair guy. Cody Smith. Conversely, is Taoist mindfulness anti-chaos? So, I will say that I don't think I am educated enough to answer that as far as what exactly Taoist mindfulness would all imply. But what I will say is that the thing about chaos that tends to be quite important is that it is a much more subtle and sinister force than what you often see. Like the demons of chaos are the very crazy end of the spectrum.
Broadly, anything taken to excess is not good. And being mindful and being calm is indeed the opposite of that. But anything can be corrupted. So the vast majority of things that lie within standard human experience are kind of, if you wish to use such language, anti-chaos, because they're not taking things to extreme. They're not going too far. They're not giving yourself over to rage. They're not falling into deep excess. So almost everything, it's not just Taoist mindfulness, all forms of balanced dealing with other people is kind of anti-chaos. But I don't think that's necessarily the best term, because it's just people being people.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is a good, that's a good thing to say of like to be anti-chaos, you do not need to be Zen. You do not need to be some great Slan prophet. You just need to have a balanced life.
Yeah. We had a bit of a discussion during 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplays writing, and also in 2nd, actually, because this came up. Because there was this almost puerile view that all sex meant Slanesh. So basically all humanity was sort of lost in this weird way. It's one of the reasons why when I was the producer, in fact, I wasn't even producer at that point, when I was making decisions about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplays 4th edition, I made sure that Raya was one of the core deities that was made directly a core component of Imperial society, because she is all about sex. She is all about having good family relations, building families, fertility, and everything being great. But not excess. Slanesh is not that. Flex is not that. So just living your life is generally anti-chaos, if you will. It's when it goes too far and too wrong. So interesting question, because it spurred an entire discussion here.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, and this will probably come up in the Wednesday stream for the 40K thing. One of the things that I always think that modern 40K tends to goof on is it can paint this idea that like extreme puritanical thinking will protect you from chaos. And that is not true. In Warhammer Fantasy, one of the core fundamental truths is that the witch hunters are wrong. The going into villages, burning people alive, telling people, you should cover up. How dare you tempt your neighbor with your feminine? How dare you show your bare shoulders? Like all of that makes chaos more powerful. You're driving things to an excessive point. You are, you're creating fear. You're creating it's not leading to
excess. Yeah, you are falling to excess. So you are causing corruption, the potential buildup of Dar in the local area as well. In many respects, the things you're trying to chase, you're helping create. You become Batman. In that all the bad guys that are rising up around Batman because Batman's mental.
The best thing about the thing about Sigmar that makes Sigmar anti-chaos is not killing people with hammers. It is not burning people at the stake. It is not telling people that they shouldn't be sluts or don't do drugs or whatever. The thing about Sigmar that makes him anti-chaos when he's done right is community. It's people
working together.
It's people supporting one another despite their differences.
Defense from the outside. Work together. He is at heart a community god when it comes to how he manifests in the Empire, but that's quite different, for example, for how it often pops up in some writing.
Yeah, and that is what allows humanity to be good at what it does when done right. But yeah, anyway. Ricky Chapman, apologies for being late. You don't need to apologize. I mean, we're always here, technically, because you can watch the VOD. Wednesday stream idea. What are some of the characters from Fantasy that survived into AOS, and what are they doing with characters like Genevieve or Skarsnik or Celestial? We do not have the time to get into that right now. That could maybe one day be a fun Wednesday thing. We will almost assuredly do a Wednesday thing sometime, maybe this summer, where we talk about AOS. A lot of people want to see that. We'll probably do that this summer.
Yeah.
That we will figure that out. Actually, I want to bring up this quick comment. So Cathayan Harmony truly is anti-chaos and trying to find balance. If true balance, that's what the dragons believe. Yes.
Yeah,
now there is a flaw to their methodology, which if you go watch our Everchosen stream, we talk about.
Yeah, we do.
But
that's creating the Everchosen stream, one of the Wednesday streams, because we do discuss that.
And it was a banger.
It was a bit of a banger. I enjoyed that one.
Necromancer Koba, maybe the tongue is because Games Workshop was a fan of Gene Simmons from Kiss, as his alias was the Demon, and he had a pretty long tongue that he liked showing off. That's very possible.
Would not surprise me.
That would not shock me in the slightest.
Or at least an influence, because hell, yeah.
Anyway, that
are we done?
Brings us to the end.
All right, so
right
let's
on
have
time.
a quick summary. Oh, holy moly, I didn't realize we were at time already. So, who is Azul the Skulltaker? Originally, when presented in the very first version of him in the 7th edition army list for the Demons of Chaos, Azul was a very powerful bloodletter, and that was it. It was a champion bloodletter, a special character for the bloodletters, who wandered around challenging folk and taking their skulls. A fun character, nothing more. However, when the novel came out, that fun character was twisted a little and given a mortal background. A mortal who bluntly did some pretty crazy things. The core of the character was maintained, and that was someone who is unstoppable in his desire for taking the heads that he's after. And he goes chasing not just this great warlord who once defeated him, but all of their core descendants, whose power had been passed down, the 8 of those, took their skulls and murdered thousands in the process, and took the entirety of that area, that great kingdom that had stood for centuries in the north of the Shadowlands, and passed it over into the realms of chaos. So that was fun. But Azul, the Skulltaker, the Slayer of Kings, is something else as well. Because at some point, we don't know when. If we go with one timeline, it happened thousands of years ago. If we go with another, it happened a couple of thousand years ago or so. The second ever chosen, Vandal, defeats him and binds him into the Slayer of Kings, the big sword that is used by the Everchosen. Now, you might prefer that that's not the case because it doesn't explicitly state that anywhere in any book. And you know what? I reckon you could build a good argument if you desperately wish to do so. And you might, if you're a writer out there going, I don't like that, I wish it was something else. You know what? You could probably write it in a different way, but why would you? The background is very clear. We have a demonic name. We have a demon of extraordinary power who is building up in power with every skull that he takes. It's the core component of the character. It is written within it that every skull he takes, he absorbs the power of the one he has killed and in turn becomes more powerful.
It's like a natural progression of the story. Who would have thought?
The story is clear. He started as a mortal. He elevated into our trench coat wearing bloodletter. That bloodletter killed and became more powerful and more powerful and more powerful until eventually it is akin to a greater demon. Effectively, a greater demon. Certainly a demon prince by most people's measurement of such things. And when it manifests, or possibly is summoned, or possibly, I don't know, is simply encountered in the realm of chaos at some point by Vandal, is put down in such a way that Khorne himself goes, yup, I'm impressed, and marks the one that did it, Vandal, as Everchosen, as well as the other Chaos Gods also. It's a great tale. It's a great story. And it ties this character through to the destruction of the world. It ties this character from not only giving us lots of cool details about the Tong and all the various tribes that are sitting up in the north, but it also ties it right through to Archaon, ties it potentially through other Everchosens too, and provides a wealth of opportunities for authors, if they want to discuss other Everchosens at other points, to have that particular demon whisper from that weapon, to speak to all of the kings it has not only killed, but all of the kings that this Everchosen may be yet to face. Because it's a demon out of time like all the rest of them. And Skulltaker has fought across the Warhammer world from its beginning to its end, before it becomes the Slayer of Kings, the weapon that is used by the Everchosen. Which means that it has access to information which could be super fun under certain circumstances to be used by some writers, because ultimately we know that this demon is chatty. It likes to talk. It calls out challenges. It wants to kill. It's angry. It's prideful. It is hurt. And it carries trauma trauma that it wants to inflict upon others, whether that's as Skulltaker or as a big fuck off ever-chosen weapon. It wants to kill. It wants to take skulls. It's a perfect weapon to destroy the world with, and it has been honed on mortality in the Warhammer world since the beginning, since the first cataclysm. It has been perfecting itself to eventually become the weapon that is used to destroy the world. It is a great tale. Skulltaker is so much more than just simply a demon champion that was dropped in the 7th edition army list for demons.
One thing I want to add, something that actually, we always talk about that there are parts of the Everchosen or the End Times that, while the whole was a mess, there are little parts and snippets that could be pulled out to maybe one day refurbish. That could be really fun. And I will say that there is something really poetic and cool about either, I wouldn't make it Sigmar, but the representative of Sigmar wielding Galmaraz being the person that shatters the Slayer of Kings, where Uzul's defeated again by Sigmar.
That's the stories we should be telling. The people who,
or maybe that's the one time he actually was defeated by Sigmar, was as the sword.
That might be cool. There's lots of cool things you can do with these tales, but the problem is that often most people haven't read all the books. Yeah. So they are left just writing tales with what limited knowledge they have, and they miss the greater wealth of lore. Look at where we are with Lorebeards.
So what you're saying is Lorebeards should be required. It should be required viewing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we 2 years in? Like a year and
almost.
Yeah, something like that.
We're a year and a half in.
We have barely scraped the depth of knowledge that Warhammer has to offer. We have barely touched all the various characters, all the various stories. So yes, Lorebeards should be necessary viewing, because it speaks not just to what is in the books, it speaks to what the books also not only suggest, but almost clarify without realizing it. And this is one of them, that the Everchosen wields Skulltaker.
Hey, GW, sponsor us and we'll do like special secret episodes for your goofy ass Warhammer Plus or whatever.
That'd be cool, yeah.
Anyway, so thank you all very much for watching. This was good. I'm very pleased with this one. Skulltaker, he has a really, I genuinely feel it's unintentional, but there is, I think what in my brain I can only imagine was an accident of making Skulltaker and the Slayer of Kings sword the same entity. If that was intentional, whoever did it was brilliant, but I feel like it has to be a mistake. Just because of how I know the Warhammer lore works. But it makes for a genuinely kick-ass story. It really does.
I agree.
Colbo, I don't think that things as unimportant as the linearity of time holds any importance to the Chaos Gods. Maybe Skulltaker and the Slayer of Kings aren't the same demon, but it wouldn't be too ridiculous to say that they are. Yeah, it literally changes nothing. And if anything, it just makes it a more interesting story that they are. Because it would also explain why that sword is one of the scariest fucking things. Like, as far as demon weapons go, it's bonkers. And if you go, well, yeah, it's got the most powerful version of Skulltaker in it. You go, oh, well, that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense of what he is. In the same way that I was criticizing the skulls that Total War had placed inside the Cloak of Skulls, because they were all a bit meh. They didn't feel like they were the great kills of this demon that has killed all the greatest things down through time. Okay, we can just assume this is a young version of him. Sure,
yeah, that's what your campaig's about. Your campaigns, you go around and get the better skulls.
There you go. So that kind of works, okay? But all too often, Warhammer tries to add something new that's big and special, not realizing they've already got it. And in this case, they have. The Slayer of Kings absolutely makes sense. It's even called the Slayer of Kings. Skulltaker is the Slayer of Kings. It's that simple. It's so obvious.
Cody Smith, you're actually not wrong. Skulltaker, in my opinion, is one of the... For a Lorebeards, this is one of my favorite examples of a character that if you look at it from some perspectives, he's genuinely very funny. Like, there are some deeply comedic elements to Skulltaker. But if you look at him from other angles, he's horrifying or super epic or badass. And I think that's when Warhammer tends to hit its stride the best.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, we just got one snuck in at the end from Hammond there.
I sent you a great convo I had with ChatGPT. Hammond, you could talk to all of us in chat. You don't have to talk to an AI. We're here. AI.
Holy crap! I'm going to end up with saying that I am halfway through drawing my Felix, and I'll just bring him up and say that's where he is so far.
I don't understand how you're talented at so much different shit, Andy.
It
blows my mind.
There we go. That's where I am. I've got quite a lot of work to do on this one yet, but that's where my Felix is at the moment, at least. I'm quite enjoying this one because it's quite a different type. But this one, for all that might have looked like it's finished, I'm only around about 3/4 finished. Quite enjoying it.
So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure that'll be appearing somewhere for Warhammer stuff very soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I'm drawing him, but yeah, that'll be popping over there. Yeah,
I mean, I know why you're drawing him, and I can't wait to find out more of why you're drawing him.
I'm probably going to use him in one of the career arts. I just can't decide which career is best for him.
Oh, you got to do like something. If you did it for poet, I would laugh very hard.
Well, that's artist in the Warhammer career.
Oh, yeah. Maybe chronicler.
Less cool.
Chronicler.
I don't know if I have a chronicler.
That could be fun.
It could be. Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to skedaddle.
Thanks, all. That was super fun.
We had a blast. Just quick run through the schedule. If you missed the start of the stream, this upcoming Friday, Lawhammer, usual place, Lawhammer channels, usual time, especially now that British time is caught up with everyone else on daylight savings. So we're back to the normal most of the year stuff. And then no Rookery on Saturday. They're off this week, but Andy and Lindsay are hosting an award show, so we will be supporting them. I'll have links for that in the Discord when they've got that all sorted out. And then on next Sunday, we will be doing Hell Pit. And Clan Mulder's Capital, the 9 terrible circles of Hell Pit, which is a long time coming. And then on Wednesday, I forgot Wednesday, Lorebeards with Pancreas No Work for the end of the war for 40k stuff. And Dark Deeds.
Finally, please give Dark Deeds a review over at BoardGameGeek.com. I can barely even say it because we need to get 100 of those apparently, and we currently only have about 20 odd. So if you could drop a review over there, that would be amazing. It'd be enormously appreciated. I'd take it as a personal favor. Thank you.
And with that,
goodbye.
Goodbye.